And a marvellous crowd here assembled for the next running of the Tour of Flanders, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, as the riders now set here in Bruges, ready for a long day in the saddle. 269 kilometres for the riders today, and the big climbs all coming towards the end that really matter. Well, the riders all wrapped up for what is a very, very cold day indeed. The last climb will be the Bosberg at 256 kilometres, the watch out for the climb of the Muur, and also the Berendries and some of the big hills out there in Flanders. Mario Cipollini signing in, says he feels good. Here's the man who finished third last year, the world champion now, Roman Weinsteins. He also signs in. Eric Zabel, after his great win in Milan-San Remo, is indeed the man in the lead in the World Cup competition. Well, I'm Phil Liggett, and I'll be joined in commentary by Paul Sherwin, who at the moment is in amongst the crowd down there. Johan Museo, a great favourite with the crowd. This is a race for him, there's no doubt about that. As the previous winner, always in the top three in this race over the years. He last won it though in 1998. Stefan Westermann knocking on the door, the Telecom teammate of Zabel, looking for a good ride, and this is the rider who won it last year, well known in Belgium, André Schmil, as a great classic winner. Schmil also third in this race in 1998. The new colours of Tacconi Sport, Vini Calderola, and this is Dierksens, ex-champion of Belgium now, and looking as though he might like a tough day over the cobbles and the climbs of Flanders. He knows them well, he lives not far off the route. Philippe Gaumont, grown his hair a little bit here, riding for Cofidis in what is probably his last season as a professional. Eric Decker, 3 times a winner of a stage of the Tour de France last year, and is also a man bang on form. The pressure always on the Dutch. This man isn't Dutch, but he is the champion of Switzerland on a Dutch team, Zeberg. And you can hear the atmosphere here. There's been a crowd building for over 2 hours, a massive, massive crowd. Geert van Bont in his new American Mercury Viatel colours, Peter van Petegem. This is the one classic all of these men want to win. Van Petegem himself, a great champion in this event. He won in 1999. And the champion of Italy and winner of the first semi-classic this year, the Het Volk, Michele Bartoli. As he goes down the ramp, let's go now to Paul Sherwin with George Hincapie.
Well, Georgie, the big Belgian North of France Classics are around again, and it certainly is your week.
Yeah, no, this is a week that I look forward to all winter, training hard, doing a lot of work for this week, and I definitely feel really good, better than I ever have at this point of the year. So I'm confident for today.
Also, a lot of riders are saying that the races are going to be a bit different because the Mappe block that used to come to the Classics has been mixed up now into separate teams, so it might make it an easier event for you to get to the front.
Well, it's going to be as hard, I think, as even though they're not all on the same team, they still are here, and there are different teams. And based on the races the past couple of weeks, everybody's riding really well, as our team is as well. So we're confident. And we just need to do our race and try to stay up front all day.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Jatislav, this is a very important part of the season for all of the riders, and this year is a bit special for you because you're riding this year as an Olympic champion. Has it raised your profile with people?
Yeah, the Ronde, like Tour of Flanders is pretty far from a time trial, but it's still my specialty, and I still going to be well here. But the important thing is we have to show up the team tactic. We have to 100% leader George Hincapie for us, and so we have to prove that we are a capable team for the classics.
It's also important to have a rider like yourself in the classics because you've ridden them so many times and you know just exactly how to look after a man like George Hincapie.
Yeah, you're right. I have quite good experience in those races. I think today is my 10 starts in the Tour of Flanders, so I know what to do. The only point is just to be there.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Well, Rolf, it's a new year and a new season and a completely new team, and for the first time, I think, in your career, riding for a Danish team.
Ever since I was a junior. So it's a new thing, and it's first time you can say I realized that it was possible to ride in a Danish team. And we have Bjarne Riise as a director manager, and that makes a difference because he knows what it's about.
It's also important when you get a new team together like this to make a good body of riders who can work together.
Yeah, of course. You can say it's the first year we are really going up to the world-class races, and like I said again, with Bjarne behind us, we're going to get there in a few years. Hopefully it's not too late for me, but this is my 16th year now and my 13th Tour of Flanders, so today is one of the last ones, so I have to make my results now.
It's important for you as a great one-day rider to ride well in races like Tour of Flanders, but it's also important in a team like this to be the leader on the road.
Yeah, you can say the last couple of years I've had my role has not been as important as I wanted to in the Rabobank team, and that's one of the reasons why I also changed. They have new guys coming up on the block, and they are Dutch people, so it's also normal that they change a little bit. But here I can prepare and I can do my training and think only about the races that I want to do best in, and that's very important for your mind and your head to start with perfect preparation.
Good luck today.
Thanks.
Well, Max, Tour of Flanders, a new team for you this year and a different motivation.
Yeah, different motivation. 13 years on the shoulders, you know. You still have to find some way of getting yourself up there and motivated. Condition is good. You know, I speak to journalists, everybody's like, yeah, it could be the year, it could be the time, and I really kind of would like to put that little cherry on my cake, you know. I need a big victory. I really need, and I think I have the capability, and the team is there, and the legs are there, the morale is good.
A race like the Tour of Flanders, though, experience is very important.
Experience for sure is very important, you know, just knowing the right places, the right moment. Even get to know the people you're racing against. It all adds up, you know. For sure, I can't say I haven't got the experience now, and everything is on my side. It's just me bringing out the nasty side and being really aggressive today.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Well, Stefan, these two races this weekend and next weekend with Paris-Roubaix are going to be very important for you. And Eric Zabel thinks that you may be the man for Paris-Roubaix.
Yes, I hope so. I hope I'm a little bit luck this year, and I think the legs are good, the form are good, conditions good. I saw it in Harelbeke last week, and now we need a good situation in the race, and I hope I can win.
but you're used to the warmer climates like Australia and South Africa, and the weather here in Belgium and Paris-Roubaix is very bad.
Yes, but in the World Cup race, it's the weather's the same for me. It's when it's rain, it's good. When it's sunshine, it's good. And but for the other races, I like more sun. Okay, thank you.
Johan.
Hello.
How are you?
Good morning.
Good. Johan, like a lot of the other favourites, we've been hearing stories that your form has not been so good, a little bit of illness. How do you feel this morning?
On the start I feel always good, but it can change in the final. But it's true, I'm not so good like other years, but it's about the accident. I have more time. I need more time to come back, but now the season is 2 months and a half start, so it's not so much.
But when we look at the new team, the Domo Farm Frites team, you have a lot of your old teammates around with you, so that must be good for a race like Tour of Flanders.
We have a good team, and we have also Roman Weinsteins in the team. Today he is our leader.
Good luck. Well, Eric, this has been a continuation of last season, which was a great season for you. Already you're in excellent form, and many people think you've got a great chance to win here at Flanders.
Well, I don't think I'm one of the big favourites, but just behind I'm there, I think.
It's a race where you need experience. You've ridden Flanders before, and you also need a good team, and Rabobank this year seem to be one of the top teams.
Yeah, the team is okay, but it depends on your legs, of course. And when the legs are good, you are in the final, and when you're in the final, you can win, I think.
Not always the legs that are important, though, it's the head as well, and you seem to have a very good head this year.
Yeah, it's what you say. It's a continue of the last year's season, and from the first race, it's going okay, and it's still going okay.
Mario, peut demander deux questions? Mario Cipollini,
it's not very often we see you here at the roads of the Tour of Flanders. Have you got a different motivation? Yes. I hope that I'll have good condition today. I hope it doesn't rain. I think it might be my last chance to do something good at Tour of Flanders. It's only the second time I've been here, and I like racing in Belgium, and everything has to come to an end. After second place in Milan-San Remo, do you have a special motivation for the classics? Yes, of course. After my second place in San Remo, I hope to be competitive today and to ride a good race, and maybe one day wear the leader's jersey of the Coupe du Monde. It's a dream.
Well, it's a dream for everybody to triumph in the Tour of Flanders, no doubt about that. Big Mario himself is already a star this year with a fine second place in the Milan-San Remo. Hint of rain in the air. It is very, very cold. That's the trend this year for the Spring Classics. This is round 2 in the World Cup. We've heard there that Museo saying his world champion teammate Roman Weinsteins is the man they're going to look out for. But I'm sure if it comes the way of Museo to take over the reins, then so be it. Now let's join to the action now. You can see in the top left of the picture where we are. 116 kilometres into the race, and a group now trying to get away. The race route, very briefly, goes out onto the coast from Brugge, runs down the coast where the wind has again played its part, forced a breakaway, then returns overland and picks up all the hills of Flanders.
I think the good thing here, Phil, is US Postal Service have managed to put 2 riders into this leading group. Maddie White, the Australian, a brand new signing, and Christian van der Velde. They've got into this group at the moment, and that will take a lot of pressure off the shoulders of George Hincapie, who I think at the moment is riding in excellent condition. He's come to the Classics this year without any problems at all, no crashes or injuries, and later on I reckon this group will be brought back into the fold when the big names come to the front.
12 men left here of a breakaway that was a bit larger than this. Interesting to note though, Paul, no Seiko riders, no Cipollini and no Telecom riders, and they have of course Wisserman and the defending leader of the World Cup, Erik Zabel.
Well, they have missed out on this move. Everybody and every team in the morning has a meeting and they tell the teams, look out for the early breakaway, make sure we're represented in that, because what we do need to have is to have all of our best riders covered at the back of the race. But we need a man in the breakaway like this so that we don't have to chase. It is interesting also to note, Phil, that at the back of the group there, you can see there are 2 Lamprey riders have managed to get into this group as well. So they are obviously thinking about putting in a good performance. Maximilian Chiandri this morning at the start said to us that he felt he had good legs and maybe the Tour of Flanders is going to be good for him.
Well, you can hear the crowds cheering how Nico Eekhout is having a surprisingly good start, but not today because Lekkerbond means a flat tyre. There is Dirksens, number 51. He's leading the Lamprey team. We've been staying in the same hotel as the Lamprey riders this week and enjoying their company.
2 very good riders from Lamprey. The other rider there, Mariano Piccoli, has got into this group. Surprising to see Ludo Dirksens, Phil, actually getting into an early move like this. I would have expected him to be moving towards the front in the latter part when we come to the last 100 and so kilometres of the Tour of Flanders, where all of the big climbs are lumped together.
Velzeke is where we are at the moment, and the riders now heading down towards the serious parts of this race. A lot of riders resting back in the pack. No name, I don't think, in this breakaway. We might expect to turn the world upside down, but you never know because the racing here can change so quickly. Servaas Knaven, former champion of Holland, tucked on the back of this group as they continue. Daniela Nardello is number 25. They're the Mappe rider. A good, strong man to be relied upon as we head now towards the Kleisberg at 25 kilometres up the road. The hills are just in front of the race now.
Well, in 25 kilometres they hit that first climb, the Kleisberg, and then every 10 kilometres or so after that there's a climb all the way up to the finish. But there will be a reaction film from the big groups behind, and always watch out for Johan Museeuw, because although he says he's not riding too well, he doesn't like to come to the start of a race like the Tour of Flanders without being competitive. But after all the accidents he's had in the last 2 years, I wonder how far he can really come back.
It's the question I think everybody asks, Paul, and Museeuw has been a man of the Tour de Flanders. This has been his race. He's held all of the premier positions on the winners' podium, and he is a man that I think all of Belgium would love to see show signs of form. The leading breakaway here, and it looks as though it might swell as a chase group tries to get across, but still the big boys are waiting and they're trying to survive to fire the guns when they get into the hills. There's the group coming up, and talking of guns, number 175 there certainly has the right name, because that is Jurgen Guns, a Belgian rider on the Vlaanderen 2000 team.
In the front position there of this group now is the champion of Latvia, that's Arvis Piziks. A bit of a comeback really, Phil. He came to the block after being a very good amateur, finishing high up in the World Championships, and rode for the, at that time, Novell team. But since then he's been hunting around trying to find his form. This year he seems, having now joined the CSC online team of Bjarne Riis, that he's riding back at the top level of the sport once again. He's a man to watch out for if a breakaway like this were to succeed, because he packs a pretty impressive sprint.
There's Jurgen Guns sitting at the back. Now this group is getting itself together, but right out at the start today, down at Ostend, down on the coast there, where you can see Great Britain on a good day. Museeuw and Mereni, 2 riders involved in a crash. Also Peter Van Petegem. Far as we know, no problems. Museeuw's back in the bunch. Van Petegem, though, is, I think, out of the race today.
Paul Van Heeft, the rider there from Lotto, a very aggressive bike rider. He's in the move at the moment, trying to get himself into a situation, and in fact they have got themselves into a situation. He's ridden across to the leading group right now, and very shortly, Phil, these riders will attack the repetitive nature of the climbs here in the Tour of Flanders. Over the last couple of years they've actually changed the race route to have the climbs much more compacted in the final 80 kilometres or so, and I think it makes it a much more difficult race than it was maybe 15 years ago.
Nice to see the Italians getting in on the move here. We've got Alexandra Pataki just coming across in that group in there too. Had a good start to the season with an early win in the Settimana Coppi Bartoli, and that was last month in March. Nice little breakaway getting together now. Some of the names in it: Nico Eekhout, although we don't think he's come back since his flat tyre. Fabian de Volle, Paul Van Heeft. We've got Michael Van Heke, Daniel Nardello, Gustav, and joins Pataki on the Fassa Bortolo teams. Christian van der Velde, I think, is in here somewhere, Paul. We've got Dirksens as well. Matt White, there he is. I have a lot of time for Matt White. He's a brilliant team rider. Now again, and there's Christian van der Velde, all smiles. Matt White going to be the big workhorse, and I hope he makes the team for the Tour de France for Armstrong.
Well, Matt White's a really tough Aussie. Last year he raced on the team of Francesco Casagrande, Vinny Calderillo, and I think Armstrong had watched many of the videos to see just how tough this man was. Always prepared to go to the front and do a major part of the pacemaking. But I think, Phil, what's happening right now is this group is swelling to such a large amount that we will see it split when we get to the hilly section of the course, and I have a feeling that we'll see the return of the big names that we expect in the Tour of Flanders.
And these 4 riders, Eekhout's in here, Bossoni is also in here. Little group trying to get up now to make it something like 22 men or so in that leading group. We haven't seen yet the chase bunch. Maybe we're going to get a chance now. It's a long way down the road. There's quite a useful bunch developing. And there is another group there, Paul, and it's quite a large group as well.
Well, the race at the moment is approaching the most important part, the strategic part here of the Tour of Flanders. In that group there, you can see the US Postal Riders. There is Maddie White at the back of that group, Christian Van der Velde. They've done a great job to get in here, because very often what happens when you get to the first section of hills and the first section of cobblestones, the race does split up and the big leaders come up from behind. Now, what this would do would be to give a man like Georgie Hincapie the ability to have 2 teammates at the front of the race, and he would catch them up and find himself in a pretty serious position. Domo Farm Frites, on the other hand, there you can see they've got Cervés Carnarvon in this group, and on the far side Mariano Piccoli, a great bike rider. He's competitive, one of the rare riders nowadays, Phil, to be competitive for the full length of the season. Not only does he race in February, but all the way through the major tours, and finishes his season off usually pretty successfully in the month of October as well.
Baldato is in this breakaway. Most unusual start to the day. Stefano Zanini is the rider on Mappe going through. Here is the train now. And this is group number 3, so this will be the head of the main field. They are round about a minute to a minute and a half behind, and it looks as though Cipollini said to the Seiko boys, try and shut down this breakaway, because Seiko, one of the 2 top teams along with Telecom, are also peeping in the picture here, who haven't got anybody in the leaders up front.
Well, the big man in 3rd position there for Team Telecom is Danilo Hondo. I'm surprised, Phil, to see Seiko moving to the front like this, because I reckon once we get to the big mountains, although Cipollini told us before the start that he had good confidence, I think he'll get blown away, so he's wasting his team's efforts.
Well, in Fahrenheit it's about 52 degrees, but believe me, it feels a little bit colder than that, rather a chill in the air today. And the riders are probably the warmest of the lot of us as they race along on what is the exposed section of the course now, heading down towards hill number 5, Kleisberg. Once we get to that, we'll have some 50 miles, though, still to race. And maybe by that time there'll be a reaction from the field, because this front group is getting itself nicely together now, and it is very unusual to see so many riders out in front. And I think, in fairness, none of the riders in this breakaway, Paul, could be considered a favourite for victory.
Well, they're not considered a favourite, but they're all reasonably good bike riders. You can't discount people like Daniele Nardello or Stefano Zanini, but what it does do is, having such a large group, is it puts pressure on the main field behind, so they're going to have a very hard ride to try and catch this group. And if they allow the group to get 3 or 4 minutes up the road, they will seriously be put under pressure and trying to pull back this group, and they may not even do that. Reminds me of a Tour of Flanders many years ago when a guy by the name of René Martens won, and it was a situation like this where a group of 10 or 15 riders got clear. The main favourites in the pack watched themselves just a little bit, and when they wanted to come back it was much too late and they weren't able to. And for the moment, as you look at this group, Phil, coming into Santa Maria Latem, they are all riding well.
Yes, they are. And I also caught it courtside there. Arvis Piziks, the new champion of Latvia. Well, he's not new now. He's into his 1st season since he won the title last year. But it's nice to be in a breakaway, especially in a World Cup Classic, when you are the champion of your nation, as indeed was Cervés Carnarvon, who was in this group as well. Just popping into our picture, wearing the number some riders refuse to wear, by the way, number 13, as they think it is unlucky. Rider number 8 is Paul van Heeft, another good rider who wants to show well today. Bit of a difficulty here getting in, but he's made it at last there. There's a look down now. 22 riders are in that group as they've all come together. And we're now heading over towards the hill number 5 of the Kleisberg. There's the hills for you all to see. Number 5, second column on the left, is where we are approaching. And these boys have consolidated their breakaway over the earlier hills, including the Molenberg. But the steep climbs and the fear climbs are still to come, including the Muur de Grammont. A cobbled brute of a climb, not that long, but it hurts, and comes near the end, which is absolutely crucial.
You hear the wind coming across right now. The wind is coming from the right-hand side, which is why we've got this diagonal echelon across the road. The riders in second line there drop to the back, and then once it's their turn, they'll move across to the rider's wheel in front of them and move again forward. The reason for doing this is because riding in the shelter of the rider in front, you actually are saving an awful lot of energy, and you can put the pace up in an echelon to over 50 kilometers an hour.
So many previous winners still in this race. Rolf Sorensen, who Paul interviewed at the start, as he told us there, riding this race for the 13th time, had a wonderful career, but now gets a crack at winning it today, riding for the new Danish team, which is still hoping for a place in the Tour de France. Rolf won this race going back now to 1997, and we were there, of course. And Michele Bartley, a previous winner, we saw him signing on. We haven't seen anything of him since, but we hope that the big guns will start firing as we run down to the, not just the hills, but the very narrow roads as well. And it's when you approach those hills in the finale where you've got to work so hard to hold your position at the front of the big bunches, so you get first shot on the hills. Just look at these crowds here, Paul, magnificent.
Well, I think this is one of the biggest crowds I've seen in the Tour of Flanders in recent years. Let's not forget it's Easter Sunday, so a lot of these Belgians taking time out to go and visit the family, and most of the family live in Flanders. So at the same time, they get a chance to see the bike race, and one of the most magnificent bike races. Alongside Paris-Roubaix, I'd have to say that Tour of Flanders is my favourite of all of the one-day classics. It's a real tough bike race, and it's only a real tough man ends up winning at the end of the day.
I'm just looking at the field here, and I can tell you the organisation are just delighted. This race is actually on as we go into Velton. The simple reason being, over in Great Britain, foot and mouth disease, a nasty disease amongst the cattle there, is causing great consternation, and they were thinking at one stage of cancelling the Tour of Flanders because of the problems it could bring to the farmland around here. But happily, it's all gone on. Everybody breathed a sigh of relief, and these are the boys working hard. There's Fabio Baldato taking the breakaway through, followed by Martin van Steen, who rides for one of the small teams in Belgium.
Stefano Zanini going through there for Mopé. That's a dangerous situation for all of the other big leaders in the race, to allow a man like Zanini to get into a breakaway like this. And we're looking here at the Team Coast rider, a new team this year, that was Frankie Hoy.
That's right, Frankie Hoy also switching teams, and Alex Zula the leader of that team, and like a lot of teams, hoping for a wildcard place in the upcoming Tour de France. Group 2, top left of our screen there, at a minute 50 seconds. That is this group, the all-important group that contains the important riders. They haven't really let that breakaway run away yet, but what they are worried about is the fact that there are so many riders up there representing an awful big slice of the teams in this year's race. And the two teams, surprisingly, who have missed out are Telecom and Seiko. I'm very surprised that a team like Telecom didn't put at least one man up front.
Well, they should have been looking for that move. The Cofidis rider on the far side are just slipping back right now, is a new professional this year. He's a British rider, Rob Hales. He rode very well in the Olympic Games last year, and in fact he was looking at a place in the Madison on the podium when they crashed on the ground in the final 200 metres and were popped off the podium to finish in 4th place. He was riding on that occasion with Bradley Wiggins, a very good track rider, and it's good to see that Cofidis have brought him on board to ride on the road.
Yes, I'm glad they have too. This is teammate Jean-Michel Tessier, who's on front. Now, they too have missed a rider in the break, so that's why there's 3 big teams here chasing. Rob Hales is a brilliant track rider and got himself a medal at the Olympic Games last year on the track. Now he's been given a shot alongside David Miller in this French team. It's a French team that comes from northern France, and they certainly seem to enjoy putting a few English speakers on it, and that's good to see. Minute 35, the gap holding just about as we race now steadily towards the climb number 5, the Kleisberg. Then after that they come in rather quick succession, and it should build up the momentum of the chase group. It's rather like the Grand National, the famous horse race in Britain, this race. Once you're into the hills, they could be construed to be jumps, and you've got to stay up and keep racing at the front, and you should get somewhere near a result.
Well, a lot of boys will be jumping off the back as well, because this is a very difficult part of the course. This is Petaki at the back. He's riding very well this year, and another man who, although not a favourite before the start of the race, Phil, is the kind of rider who could come up with a surprise if this breakaway manages to stay a long way off the front. But they are slowly eating into the advantage of the 22 leaders at the moment. They had an advantage in excess of 2 minutes, and the last time check we had, it had come inside 1.5 minutes. The main thing is, in the peloton behind, once they get closer to these big climbs, they will accelerate dramatically because they'll want to place their leaders at the bottom of these climbs in the first 10 or 15 positions.
So 22 riders still holding themselves together, including the American Christian Vande on the US Postal, along with their new signing Matty White. They are the two riders chosen to be put into the break today for a bit of hard work in the saddle. There is Matt White at the back as the field in a long thin line here. Now the pressure going on. 54 they're looking for a little bit of the action behind. Looks like Dirkson's. He's allowing a few gaps and at 86 there, so that'll be Van der Velde, who's tacked onto the back, not Matt White. Looks over his shoulder. Christian unlucky last year when he nearly got a start in the Tour de France and had to return home because he was bitten by a spider or some such creature.
Very strange thing to happen to you just before the start of the Tour, but I'm sure that Christian Vande Velde will be thinking forward now to the month of July and hoping to ride up alongside Lance Armstrong in his attempt to win the Tour de France 3 times in a row. You can see the speed now. We're not too far away, Phil, from heading up towards the Klausberg for the first time, and that climb in French, by the way, is known as the Mont de l'Enclus. It's a very difficult climb from the side these riders will be attempting it. They drop off the other side, and then almost immediately within 5 kilometers they've got the Knokteberg, which I think is a real brute of a climb.
Well, this is no doubt a race made for the Belgian cyclists since we started back in 1913. And the last 3 years has been won by the Belgians. André Schmil, now a Belgian, and Van Petegem and Museo. Christian Vande Velde there having a little chat. This is Piccoli. Maldato on the far side. There's nobody here who isn't afraid to have a little go here. They might be sensing they've got themselves a good move. They know that they're without the big names, but they know also they've escaped some of the big teams, and there's plenty of them. This could become a little bit of a war of attrition once we get into those hills, inside the last 100 kilometres now.
Fabien Douala leading them through, and you're right, Phil, all of these riders very prepared to go forward and put the hammer down at the moment. There aren't too many passengers on the back of this group. You can see a little bit of disorganisation at the back, but only 4 or 5 riders. The majority of the men in this group are working hard, and they may now feel that they may be able to cause the big surprise in the Tour of Flanders by building on an advantage which at one time was 2 minutes. You can see now they're just coming through the feeding station. The feeding station is around about 3 kilometers to go to the bottom of the Klausberg. And still interesting to note that 1 or 2 riders, I think, must really start to think that they are in with a chance, especially a man like Stefano Zanini, who alongside him has got Daniele Nardello, and those 2 riders are excellent one-day classic riders, but probably a little bit lost with the fact that the team blew up during the winter months and they lost riders like Wilfred Peters and Johan Museo. This is Dirk de Mol in the team car for United States Postal Service, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix, and obviously the man to give these guys an awful lot of insight into riding the classics here in the northern part of Belgium. Because on the other part of the team, Phil, I think Johan Brunel will be looking after Lance Armstrong, who should very shortly be coming back from the United States and the Ride for the Roses and be taking part in the Circuit of the South.
This is Paolo Bossoni, 78, new rider on the block, as he comes up alongside Matty White there from US Postal. The one distinguished man in this race, I suppose, is Fabio Baldato. He's twice finished second in it, and he has been a very, very good sprinter, but he seems to have lost those twitch fibres now. He doesn't seem to sprint quite as quickly, but he's got himself into an early move today. Beautiful echelon these boys have got going. It's tough at the back when the line becomes absolutely straight, because the boys in the diagonal there are taking all of the shelter, working well together, and you can see how the boys at the back are having to really grit their teeth and hang on.
It's Matty White at the back here, hand up. He's obviously going back to the team car, just about to take his extra coat off there because he knows that the pressure is going to hot up quite rapidly. One thing a lot of people don't know about Matty White is, in fact, his wife is an Olympic athlete. She took part in the Olympic Games last year in the 20-kilometer walk, and you're not allowed to lift your foot off the ground at any time in the walk, and his wife was actually disqualified inside the tunnel of the stadium, and it was quite a dramatic withdrawal.
Yeah, both feet off the ground at the same time, otherwise you wouldn't walk very fast. But you're right, she was in the gold medal position, and unfortunately, along with many other athletes that day, disqualified. The judges took a hard line in Sydney, and Matt White, who comes from Sydney, was very, very distressed about that. But he's now happy again. He's doing what he does best, that's ride a bike, and he is a workhorse of extraordinary calibre. And he's doing well here now. Not doing any work now, he's waiting now to see what happens. He's just setting himself up for what could be another 2.5 hours in the saddle at this sort of speed. And they're not really slipping away from the chase, and I'm sure they are aware of that too.
Well, I think US Postal Service have told these two guys to actually sit on at the back of the group. This is a very dangerous part of the course here, going through the bevoorrading, as they call it in Flemish, the ravitaillement in French. That in fact is the feeding station, and you have to be very alert going through here, because if somebody drops a bag and it gets caught in your front wheel, it causes a pretty dramatic crash.
Sitting up there riding no-handed is Alexander Pataki, another man who pinched a few good wins last year. He came to the fore, it was a good season for him, and he's now got the confidence to get up and have a go. And the Italians are not great performers over the years. One or two big names have been, but basically the country itself don't like these cold classics in Belgium. Fabien de Walle from the Lotto team, loading up for the long day still to come. And now, with all the food in his back pockets, closes down the gap.
Well, the next part of the course, in fact, Phil, it's always very difficult to keep topped up with food and carbohydrates, because you're either going uphill or fighting for position for the next mountain climb of the day, and that's why it's so important in a race like the Tour of Flanders to eat as much as possible in the first 150 kilometres, which you will see these riders, even in the starting area, they're nibbling on little bits of food to keep their energy levels topped up right from the word go. The day started 3 hours before the start, when they sit down for a huge breakfast, which includes normally omelette and pasta.
Oh, just what you want at about 7 o'clock in the morning, isn't it? Now, I think we've mentioned every name in the break. One or two I may not have mentioned. Is Christophe Detillieu of one of the French team, small French team. We've also got the under-23 1999 world champion, now with Fassa, Leonardo Gidani. And everybody else we've identified for you, all 22 of them. They're going to keep the pressure on here for as long as they can, because once they hit the hills, then we will see riders try to escape off the front and thin out anybody who's hanging on the back of this line at the moment who might not be feeling just too good.
Well, the difficult decision now with the team managers in the back is to decide which team is actually going to pick up the chase, because Domo Farm Frites, for example, they could say, we don't want to chase because we've got Cervés Carnarvon in this group. Mappe don't want to chase because they've got Zanini. So those are the two major teams who I regard as the big favourites before the start. And for them, it's going to be difficult, because with 22 men and their right men represented, it's going to be a strange situation leading into the hilly section of this course.
Kleisbergen, just about 5 miles on the nose of the riders now. And then we're into the province of Henegouwen as we start then our loop of Flanders. And then once we go into these loops which switch back on themselves, the public have a marvellous day, because they just keep zipping around, turning up at different points, seeing the race, moving on to the next one, and they're never very far away from the course.
Christian van der Velde from Chicago, keeping himself fully loaded with as much food as possible. His father, also a very prominent cyclist on the track over here in Europe, John van der Velde, and the owner of the Vanderdrome. His father, in fact, trying to set up a series of track events around the United States.
Good start to the season for Christian. He's riding a very solid race, looking for the form that will hopefully get him his ride this time around in the Tour de France.
Another man who's had a very good start to the season as well, Jans Koorts, winner of one of the fastest stages ever in a bike race around the world in the Tour de Langkawi. Looking a bit podgy there right now, but that is very much the early season fat, I think. But this man certainly was storming in the Tour de Langkawi when you were there, Phil.
No, it was a fabulous occasion, and yes, he apparently now has the honour of having recorded the fastest modern-day road race stage of international level of cycling, and he won the stage that did that. And he's now riding for his new team, the Mercury Viatel team. And they, like so many, hoping for a final wildcard place in the Tour de France. They haven't got one yet, and there are 4 places available. and I think there are 12 teams lining up for those 4 places.
It's going to be very tough, and in fact that is why I should think we've heard that Greg LeMond is coming over to Europe next week. Greg LeMond very much associated with the Mercury Viatel team, and Greg, I think, will be over here to do a bit of politicking with the Society Tour de France to see if they will pick his team for the next upcoming event in July. But certainly, as you say, 12 teams for 4 places, that's not a very easy choice.
No, it isn't. Just to complete the tale about that faster stage for Jan Scootz, it was 51.5 kilometres an hour, which he did in Langkawi. Tailwind blowing off the South China Sea, and it got him down to the finish line in double quick time. But 51.5 kilometres an hour, about 32.5 miles an hour, and that's not bad, is it, when you've also got all of the tactics involved, as now these boys are going to have to work out what they're going to do. And I think they're just waiting for the hills to start so they can start releasing some power.
White jersey in about 7th or 8th position just back there was the current world champion, Ronan Weinsteins. The man that Johan Museo told us before the start was the #1 leader for Domo Farm Frites today. 4.9 kilometres to the Kleisberg, or the Mont de l'Enclos, the first serious climb now. And once they get over that, Phil, they head up to the Knokterberg. And that's a strange little position if you ever get across to Flanders here, because at the top of the Knokterberg you can actually see the riders turn left and drop down into the valley and then come back up the other side of this range of hills in this part of Belgium and climb up the Old Quaremont.
Yes, massive, and they're talking of bringing that back in again soon. But we're not losing any sight of the main field here. Look at this, at 1:18, that's nothing whatsoever. And so this breakaway far from safe. They're just trying to play the cards here and then see what develops once they disappear into the little hills of Flanders, which we call bergs. The crowd down there is one of the best, as Paul has said, I think we've seen for many, many years here. The wind a bit troublesome, as you can see, the crosswinds blowing as the diagonal line forms on the road. Now that on the left of our things means another 12 hills remain and 8 stretches of pave or cobblestones still to be tackled before the end.
I'm a bit surprised, Phil, to see that gap coming down quite dramatically as it has been over the last few kilometres, because these guys at the front are absolutely hammering at the moment. They're doing a very good job. They're all working fairly well together, and as you can see, that they're urgently moving themselves forward because they know the next 3 or 4 kilometres is going to take them into the very strategic part of the course.
Yes, indeed, and they're still keeping hopes high for the United States with 2 members of the US Postal Service team here. Servais Knaven right there, number 13. No sign of anybody chasing, and no sign really. I suppose there are 4 or 5 riders not assisting here, but I don't think that's because they're tired. I think they're playing their own tactics myself.
I have a feeling the 2 US Postal Service riders have been told to back off just a little bit, because as Ekimov told us before the start, the #1 favourite for US Postal Service here was most certainly going to be their man George Hincapie.
So looking at the bunch here now as they cross over the river. This is the main, well, the breakaway rather, but it really is a bunch of some 22 riders, nobody being dropped. Now we're panning back to the right. Now we're looking back at just 77 seconds here from the helicopter up the road, and there's the average speed for you. It's very, very quick, Paul, at 44 kilometres an hour.
Despite all those crashes at the start, the hammer has been down, and the first hour of racing was run off at 47 kilometres an hour. Quite remarkable, really, and a lot of that is to do with the fact that we have got a sort of northerly wind at the moment, pushing the riders away from Ostend, where they went up to the coast and then back inland here. They've been pushed to speeds in excess of 50 kilometres an hour at certain points. The man on the front of the main field there doing all of the work for Team Telecom is Danilo Hondo. He's working today for Erik Zabel, the current leader of the World Cup after his win in Milan-San Remo after round 1. But it seems as if, although we're getting the time check being stable, that they're actually losing a little bit of ground on the leading 22.
Only a little bit, though. We're not talking anything significant here. And it's because 3 big teams are still at the front, and there's one of them now, Roger Hammond, the British rider's up into 2nd place there. He's riding very, very well this season and always seems to turn out for these classics in good condition, although he's had some bad luck too in previous years. Broken his wrist before now in this event.
Well, Roger Hammond, a very tough bike rider. In fact, he's a very good cyclocross man and usually represents Great Britain every winter in the Cyclocross World Championships.
Yeah, and Kolstrop, his team, are all up here now, as joining in with Cofidis as they try desperately to chase these riders down, and they're at least holding them, they're not escaping. We've got Tessier on the front just now, there he is, gritting his teeth. A little bit of help coming from the Telecom team, and not surprised either. Danilo Hondo, who is a very good winner as well. He's driving at the front, playing his other role as domestique for Zabel and perhaps for Weserman today.
Stefan Weserman looking very confident on the start line this morning. These classics certainly do fall into the kind of classics that suit a man like Stefan Weserman. We saw him riding very well last year in the Tour of Flanders, but I think he may well be thinking forward to Paris-Roubaix, because that certainly is a great bike race for him. The leading 22, though, Phil, now are getting closer and closer, edging towards the Klausbergen, and then we will see who are the strong men from this group. It's great to see last year's under-23 world champion in there, Giordana, and he is a man that many people think is a future star for Italy.
Look at that beautiful echelon across the road there as the rider on the left, Baldato, sets the pace, and then they have a little bit of a swing around and a rest period as they come through on the lee side of the riders, out of the wind. The Lotto boys deciding now to try and reorganise themselves here at the back. I'm not sure there whether in fact Fabien de Valla had a bit of a problem, but he came back on anyway.
Well, they've got three men in this group, which is rather strange. They've got Eekhout, they've got de Valla, and they've got Paul van Heefte. And basically the tactic for the day really would have been to look after their man André Schmiel. So they are in a bit of a predicament right now, Phil. They don't want this breakaway to succeed too much, but they do want to stay in front until we get to the top of the Old Quaremont, where they will be certain that their man will come to the front, because this year André Schmiel, as last year, is riding very well. Completely adopted now as a Belgian, the man who started off life being born in Siberia, and he's changed nationalities, I think, more times than I've had new coats.
He speaks fluent Italian because of it, as well as his home country's languages. He's Russian and as well as Belgian, and he speaks no English, which is unusual because, as you saw at our beginning of our programme, many of the riders we speak to understand the English language. Well, these 22 have been shaping this race ever since we swung away from Ostend in a race that's caused Museo and Peter van Petegem to fall today. As the race now speeds towards the little bergs of Flanders, it is still overcast, occasionally a hint of rain, but basically the sun is out as we speak, and the temperature early 50s, early to low 50s, and it is a very difficult day for the spectators to keep warm, but the riders, I would say, conditions just about perfect.
Well, we were right about the main field slowing down a bit. The gap up now to 1 minute and 38 seconds. Now, that little hill you can see in the background, that is the start of the Mont de Flandre, the Flemish mountains. And basically this race, Phil, zigzags across this one chain of hills throughout the bottom part of Belgium, and it makes it exceptionally difficult. They climb over it one way, go along the bottom, then pop over the other way again. And it's amazing that they've managed to find this continuous line of hills all the way down to the finish in Merbeek. At the back there, a quick glimpse of Zanini, but on the front of the main field, an awful lot of work. There's Stefan Weserman moving forward now, number 36, giving some instruction to Danilo Hondo on the front. He obviously wants to start this climb in the first few positions.
Yes, he would like now to see this group come just a little bit closer. He's also holding a good position once they get to the hills. They won't relinquish their positions now as they approach the Kleisberg, because it is so narrow when you get onto these climbs that if you lose your position, then you could be balked by riders falling, gears jamming, anything like that, and you're left chasing instead of using that energy to get off the front of the group. So they'll fight to hold their positions at the front of the peloton now as they approach the fifth climb of the day, but there's been such a long gap since the fourth climb.
Certainly hurts when you're a domestique. Your little glimpse there of Hondo just stretching those legs, stretching his back, because he's been using a huge gear. His race will almost be over once we get to the next section of climbs. Moving on to his wheel there in the white jersey of Domo Farm Frites is Wilfred Peters, so not far away from him. I'm sure we should be able to catch a glimpse of Johan Museo. Museo obviously would love to get onto the podium again here at the Tour of Flanders, but after smashing his leg once again in a motorcycle accident last year, I wonder if he has got the strength to come back to the top once more.
Well, he's also had another reminder how fragile the world is with his crash today, and Van Petegem, I think, is now out of the race as well, and Gert van Bont, another rider who's fallen.
Well, that is a blow for Van Petegem and for Mercury Viatel, because they really, Phil, needed a good performance over the next couple of races to try and get themselves a slot in the upcoming Tour de France. And although Van Petegem started the season off quite well with a great ride in Paris-Nice, ever since then he's been fighting off illness.
So Hondo on the front. Still the Lamprey boys trying to spoil the party a little bit here, because we've got Bertogliati, who is the Lamprey rider, just not really going through, because he's got a man up in the breakaway. Two, in fact.
I think Lamprey will be pretty happy with the combination of riders they've got in the leading group right now, because Ludo Dirksen is the man that they would expect to ride well. But Hondo is powering away here. He probably thinks that everybody's on his tail right now, and as you can see, sitting up, because his job for the moment is to make sure that he gets Stefan Weseman to the foot of this climb in the top. But I think job done, day over for Danilo Hondo, and he'll be looking for the next feeding station.
2 miles it is to the climb now of the Kleisberg. It's been some 25 miles since we climbed the Groteberg, and so it's been a long time of consolidation between break and bunch. They've never got away from this bunch. They've eased the furthest away for some time, though, to 1:46 just now. And I think this hill will not come soon enough for the peloton to give them a ramp to start their reaction.
Well, this has been one of the most rapid starts to any Tour of Flanders I can remember, Phil. Normally, over the first couple of hours, the riders meander along and ride themselves in, keep very much warm with extra clothing. But since we came up to Ostende, the hammer has been down all of the time. And the fact that this large group has been off the front means that nobody has actually sat back and recuperated at all in this race. So we will have, going into the hilly section of the course, an awful lot of tired bodies in this group.
Our helicopter there, having a little bit of a journey. Before, in the distance, you can see the 22 front runners. That's a big gap still to close for the field. At 1:48 and 85 kilometres, just over 53 miles, down to the finish in Ninove, which is in a province of town of Ninove, but the actual village is called Meerbeke.
Everyone's starting to stretch now. You know, riding with big gears on these flat Belgian roads for an awful long time, you tend to get aches and pains that you wouldn't normally get in different races, because a lot of the undulating races you get the ability and the chance to get out of the saddle on a regular basis. But here in Belgium, you are sitting down using monster gears for hour after hour, and that's what really does make it very difficult. There is the Klausberg. It's the 5th climb of the day. 15% is the grade at the summit. It's only a kilometre long. It climbs up just a mere 100 metres. But I tell you one thing, it is a very difficult climb when you've been on the bike for almost 150 kilometres.
And just sitting on the back there, one name I haven't mentioned, Martin Den Bakker, is another Rabobank rider in this leading group. He's riding last man at the moment. Good classic rider. Got placed towards the front end of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. There is Matty White having a good look at the camera. Loves it when you can see the television, and turns on the style. Pataki going through, and the boys some Lotto.
Fabio Baldato moving to the front. De Waele in second place. There's Frankie Hoy for the new Team Coast. That's Paul van Heefte, the Lotto rider in red and black, coming up now. The white jersey there is the new rider, Giordana, the under-23 world champion. Moving to this new Faso Bortolo team. They started last year, but they've certainly bolstered the squad a lot this year with the addition of Francesco Casagrande, and they, I think, are led by the #1 team manager in the world, Giancarlo Ferretti. He really is like a fox when it comes down to deciding what kind of tactics to adopt. Van Heefte on the front, setting the tempo, but looking across now, Phil, and looking for a bit of help.
I think they'll all going to need a bit of help soon, Paul. The gap is, though, pushing out. It's almost 2 minutes here as they get through to start the climb of the Kleisberg. And a gritting of the teeth now, because they have had the hammer down for a couple of hours. This has been a very fast race. They gradually came together until they built a lead group of 22. It's time now to hang on in there and see what happens. The strong men will go forward. The weak ones will be swallowed up by that chase behind.
You can see this man breathing on the front here. This is the steepest part of the course at 15%. He's just breathing as much as he can. They will reach the summit. You can almost see it through the trees here at the back. Stefano Zanini being very cool, very collected, just keeping an eye on all of the other riders to see if anybody's going to crack. And the man under difficulty here at the back of the group, in fact, is Christophe Detieu, rides for the small Kolstrup Polman's team. And going off the front right now, this looks like Giordana himself. It's his first time, I would think, Phil, at the Tour of Flanders.
Yes, he's a pro now. Was the 99 under-23 champion. But he looks a very big boy to handle these climbs. There's all sorts of boys in trouble now, because hanging at the back is Pataki. The Fassa Bortolo Italians are not looking so good right now as they all begin to slow down to the cheers of the crowd. There's the steep climb over just about of the Kleisberg, as the next climb they'll come to will be the Konokterberg, and that is only about 5 miles further on.
See all the flags there, the yellow flags with the Flandrian lion on. They're all out here today for the man they nickname the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museo. I doubt if he'll win today, Phil, but he will certainly have a hand in the end result. This is the main field now, approaching the bottom of the climb. There's a couple of arm warmers ejected from the bunch there, and if you're at the side of the road, that's a very nice souvenir. Thank you very much. It's Lotto moving to the front. On the far side, you've got 1 or 2 riders in the pink and blue jerseys of Lampre right now. They are obviously trying to keep themselves at the front. That's Maximilian Chiandri on the right-hand side.
And the CSC team are getting in on the act with the black flashes too, because they're thinking of Rolf Sorensen as they start now. This is where we expected. The Credit Agricole teams are coming forward as well. Teams who haven't got many in that breakaway. This is now becoming the crucial point of action.
Well, there is George Hincapie. The first glance we've had at Hincapie riding up to the front now. He was surrounded by his teammates. That's the rider from Luxembourg, Benoit Joachim. His job today really just to look after Georgie Hincapie. The man from Cofidis is Peter Farrazijn. In fact, since the Belgian Frank Vandenbroek left Cofidis, it seems as if the other Belgians on the team have flourished somewhat, as we got another quick glimpse of Maximilian Chiandri there. 34 years of age, a former bronze medalist at the Olympic Games in Sydney. But you can see the main field now, Phil, are much more serious in earnest about setting the tempo on the front of the group. All of Belgium has turned out here. We're actually right on the linguistic border, because on the far side of this climb they speak Flemish, and on the near side they speak French.
And they all ride the bikes very quickly indeed now, as Farrazijn sets the pace from Joachim, the champion of Luxembourg, and looking out now to launch George Hincapie when the right moment happens along, and it could be any minute now.
Well, the leading 22 now are on the valley road leading across to what they will see in the distance, the Konokterberg. Kop van de Wegstrijd, by the way, means the front of the bike race in Flemish, and this certainly is the front of the Tour of Flanders right now. The 2 white jerseys on the front are Fassa Bortolo. That's Giordana, who looked absolutely superb on the climb of the Mont de l'Enclos, and on his wheel will be his teammate Fabio Baldato. But they certainly, Phil, didn't they, put their own teammate Pataki under pressure?
They certainly did, and they got rid of 2 of them. De Thieu went, and also Pataki has gone. He hasn't got back, Paul, and there's only 20 left at the front now as we race towards the Konokterberg.
Well, you can see Matty White there just in front in the US Postal Service jersey. He is having a very hard time staying on the wheel. These roads in Belgium, by the way, are made out of a kind of cement. They're laid down and there's a joint down the middle, and many of the riders call that joint Death Valley, because if you actually get your wheel stuck in it, I've seen riders just go straight over the top of the handlebars.
Well, these boys now are concentrating on just the wheel in front to try and hold the pace. That's 75 kilometres to go. It won't have gone unnoticed, at least by the leaders. Inside 50 miles to the finish now. Piccoli is 54, just peeping into our picture. Number 4 there at the front is Thierry Marichal. And a little drink required from the rider on the left here.
Mariano Piccoli wears 54 for Lampre Dakin there. Lampre Dakin almost a home team here, really, because they're the kind of riders who are supported by the Belgian sponsor Dakin. Although apart from Ludo Dirksen, the majority of the riders who've come up here to race in the Tour of Flanders are Italian. Lotto in a pretty good shape right now, because having Nico Eekhout in this group, Phil, they must feel reasonably confident, although I think they would have preferred to have André Schmil.
And he's Matt White here, having a chat with Decker. I think Matty got a little message through on his radio at the same time there, and I wonder if they're telling him that George is driving at the front now, and just to sit where he is, don't contribute to this breakaway, make the best of the position that he has, but certainly don't make it draw away any further from the field.
Well, Eric Decker wearing 61 is an outsider I wouldn't have wanted to let get into a breakaway situation like this, because he will have a much easier approach to the climbing section of the course than the other leaders in the group behind. Frankie Hoy, 151 from the new Team Coast, another team with a whole host of stars who are hoping to buy their way into the Tour de France this year. They have Alex Zuller on their squad, as well as Fernando Escartin.
Couple of bottles there for Frankie, former champion of Denmark. Oh, and don't forget this either, bit of food as well.
Don't forget the man in the car there as well, Jørgen Markussen, a magnificent bike rider in his time. 2 times third at the World Championships at the professional level. Raced most of his career for Italian pro teams.
And well known in the United States as well. Used to come over and race in the States. These are the exposed stretches of road again now. This wind continuing to be quite strong and to rip across the riders. There's a group of riders at the front doing all of the work, and the hangers on at the back here are just being policemen. It's not their job to set the pace at all, and I'd watch out for Erik Dekker there, number 61, because I'm sure he's feeling good.
Well, he'd be pretty happy with the situation that he's in at the moment, in a leading group of 22 riders. It gives you a little easier approach into the Berg section of the Tour of Flanders. You don't have to fight quite so much. You don't have to take the risks to stay in the front of the main field, and certainly in the front of the main field now, Phil, it is going to be almost like a battleground, because you've got all the main favourites with their teammates moving them forward all of the time, and you've got about enough room on some of these climbs for 2 riders wide, and you've got 50 people trying to get into that space.
Yeah, there's our cameraman. He's put his camera right down on the road here as he speeds through the pack. Paul van Heeft, number 8, in the red Lotto colours, and he's decided to give up his bid for the front and go back to the rear of the field to allow them the chance to see all of the corner. It's amazing just how they've locked it in at 1 minute 42. Paul, it's just neither going there, it's not going away, it's doing absolutely nothing right now.
I don't think it'll change till we get to the old Quaremont right now, because this climb, the main field will accelerate up it somewhat, but they will really go hammer to the wall when they come to the final, the next climb, the older Quaremont, because that is the first real section of cobblestone climbs. This climb again, the Knokteberg, only made of a tarmac covering up towards the top, very steep. But the important part now really is setting yourself up for the old Quaremont. The 2 US Postal Service riders, I think, have had the word to sit at the back, and Erik Dekker, who is always happy to chat to them in English, just having a quick word with them.
Bit narrow around here, as you can see. These roads, not much traffic on them at all, except when the Tour of Flanders come down, the odd farm vehicle. Lovely roads to go touring on. And many roads in Belgium have compulsory cycle paths. You must ride them when they are provided, but on roads like this, of course, there aren't any, and it wouldn't make any difference either way to riders in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, as these riders just continue to tap on.
This road gets steeper and it gets narrow, and 1 or 2 riders will be put into serious difficulty, having been at the front of the bike race for some time. The time gap now still stretching to 1 minute 42 seconds, but I think we may well see a change in the front of the main group as we get over the next couple of climbs. There's a banner indicating the start of this climb, climb number 6, the Knokteberg. And when they come out on the top of this climb, they actually drive into a road called the Ronde van Vlaanderen Straat, or the Tour of Flanders Street, named after the organizer, the original organizer of the Great Tour.
And there are the details of the Knokteberg, 13%, just over a kilometre. Not very high above sea level, is it, at 89 metres? It's short and sweet. And then, as Paul says, into the Van Vlaanderen Straat, and then we're heading towards the old Quaremont. And that's another rendezvous with a tough cobble brute. Now, let's see if they can just get anybody away here, and I don't think they can. It's Paul van Heeft on the front.
Paul van Heeft is riding on the front, but you see how cleverly there in 3rd position Erik Dekker just weaved his way up through the field without hardly using any energy at all to move himself into 3rd slot. On his wheel there is Stefano Zanini. Zanini, also a very wily character, who's raced many years alongside Johan Museeuw. He knows this race very well. This race and the Tour and Paris-Roubaix next week are 2 races which he certainly would like to shine in.
Now the up slopes again here as the riders begin to go on the climb. They'll keep the pressure on. Van Heeft is going to keep the pressure on. I'm just wondering if indeed there'll be anybody behind the beginning to struggle, because our camera's committed to the front here now. There's no way you can get behind the pack that's covering the road from corner to corner.
Paul van Heeft now sacrificing himself really, Phil, to try and put Nico Eekhout into a good position going into the next section of cobblestones. This on the front now is the main group. They're on the same climb right now. This is Piotr Wadecki, the champion of Poland from the Domo Farm Fried squad, putting the pressure on. They're obviously trying to get their man Roman Weinsteins into a good position. And there is the champion, I thought it was the champion of Holland, but it's still Benoit Joachim of the US Postal Service team in about 5th or 6th position. So Georgi Hincapie can't be too far behind that either.
That's good news for all concerned. And how narrow is this now as Wadecki keeps on pushing up the pace at the front, doing his big turn. He used to ride for the Polish Moroz team. He's got his big chance now to move across from the 2nd Division team in Poland to the 1st Division team.
This is the turn now at the top of the Knokterberg. One more right turn and then they'll be on the Ronde van Vlaanderen Straat, and then they drop down. This is the leading group now, having come over the top of the Knokterberg, dropping down into Kruisbergen. And at the bottom they will take a right-hand turn, and very shortly they'll be on the early slopes of the Old Quaremont. A very difficult climb, I've always felt, Phil. In fact, the cobbles at the bottom are not the hardest part. The hardest part is actually when the climb levels out and goes through the fields. You've got a big wind coming across, especially as we do have today, and you have to use a huge gear just to roll along. 63 kilometers an hour right now. That's over 40 miles an hour.
And there are only 14 left. Now 20 started that climb, so we've dropped half a dozen riders there, but we're at the front rather than the back. So we'll have to try and work it out as we go along. But certainly Bassoni has gone, that's for sure. As we pan down, there's one rider trying to get back on quickly before they get to the next climb.
Looks like Frankie Hoy, I think, is trying to get across there from Team Coast. Surprising to see him dropped off the back there in the new blue, black and yellow squad. And there's another rider, looks like one of the riders from Fassa Bortolo, trying to pull himself back too.
Now let's have a look at the back of the field here. This might be a bit of a replay here. This is Eekhout, so it was Eekhout who went at the back of the race as well.
Well, that is very strange because he's actually in pretty good form right now. He started off the year by winning the Étoile de Bessèges. Just a week ago he won the Dwars door Vlaanderen, the race across Flanders, and in fact for him to get dropped, I don't think Lotto are going to be too happy with that.
No, I don't think they are either, because they had 3 riders up there. They've been weakened now, and especially ironically because it was Van Heeft who was doing a lot of the work at the front that shed their man Nico. So are they getting 1 or 2 have got back, I think.
Well, 1 or 2 riders scrambling back. Another man caught out there. I thought I caught the sign of Mariano Piccoli as well, so a bit of a surprise for him to get left behind. But Paul van Heeft there was obviously not a lot of communication between the Lotto riders, Phil, because Van Heeft set the tempo for his teammate Nico Eekhout, and he actually got dropped as well. So they obviously should have had a little chat before they got to the start of that climb.
It would have been a good idea. Don't forget now, they've been under pressure for an awful long time and never really got away from the field because there's some fine tempo riding being done by Cofidis, Telecom and Seiko back in the main bunch. Number 2 is Fabian de Vela, so he didn't get dropped, that's for sure.
The Vlaanderen 2000 rider on the back there is Jurgen Guns, and here sitting very comfortably in this group as well is Martin den Bakker, the other rider from Rabobank.
Fabio Baldato, so he's still here too. I think they've only dropped, in fact, 2 riders now. And there's Zanini going through, so he's made it. Servais Canavan is still here. The names we would expect, as this group has become very workmanlike just now. As far as I can see, the 2 US Postal boys are still there. And they've also managed to add a couple of seconds to the escape, up to 1:50.
Well, that is quite surprising, because I would expect the main field really to be hammering at the moment. They seem to be over the top of the Knokterberg, and maybe the next time we get a time check it will have come down just a little bit, because Domo Farm Fried now, Phil, seem to have been the team who wanted to set the pace-making at the front. These are the riders who were dropped from the leading group just a few moments ago. That is Mariano Piccoli. And it's strange, really, because Piccoli's in pretty good form in the early part of the season, and I think by the bottom of the Old Quaremont they should reintegrate into this leading group.
Just in time to get left again, because it is really a hard climb.
Well, that's what the Tour of Flanders always seems to be about. If you get dropped on the climb, you fight your way back just before the bottom of the next climb, you get dropped again, and you fight your way back, and you get dropped again, and eventually the elastic snaps, and only the strong men remain at the front. And it is so repetitive, the nature of these climbs. This is the corner now at the bottom of the Old Quaremont. Every bike rider in this part of Flanders knows it. Every cyclo-tourist knows it. Just on the right-hand side there's a little gazebo, which I'm pretty sure the people who live come out and have a wonderful tea whenever Tour of Flanders comes past. But at this time of the year, Phil, nearly every other bike race in Flanders seems to come along this road over the Old Quaremont. The Grand Prix E3, Kern, Brussels-Kern, they all use this climb.
Even us, Paul. We've been out on it as well on our bikes 2 days ago. It's a brute of a climb, and we're nearly on it now. We're into the narrow, very narrow lanes in this area as they make their way to the climb. Then the cobbles will start on the climb itself, and then we go across the crossroads and make our way out on to the next hill.
You can see just how narrow this road is, and once you get to the cobbles it comes in another couple more feet. Fabien de Walle is number 2, the Lotto rider at the back. Just in front of him is Paul van Heefte, and they probably are not going to be too happy with Nico Eickhout, who was one of the co-leaders of the team alongside André Schmiel. The 2 Rabobank riders a little bit too far back for the moment, but you can see them moving forward now as we get closer to the cobblestone sections. The amazing thing about the bike riders, Phil, is they know these courses so well, having ridden them year after year, and they'll know that at a certain point just before the climb you have one chance and one chance only of moving to the front, and that's exactly what Dekker has done. Dekker's on the front right now, and I think that's Christian van der Velde on his wheel.
And good for him, because you need to be at the front of this climb. Lots of things can happen once the cobbles begin, so you've got to keep the pressure on and give it a real good go right on the nose today. As they continue now onto the basic bottom of the Old Quaremont, it gets a little bit cobbled very shortly. Now this will be a toughie, I think. There's the cobbles begin now. Get hold of those handlebars in the centre. It is a tough climb. It's a 1 in 9 or 11% ascent.
Well, Jürgen Gunn is getting gunned out of the back at the moment. This is what the Tour of Flanders is all about. This is Paul van Heefte. He also is going on the front, off the back I should say, and it seems as if all of the Lotto riders right now are getting blown to pieces. Dekker in second position. There in third position is Christian van der Velde. Also moving forward was Matty White for the US Postal Service as well.
I think the rider doing the work here is Martin van Stein of the little-known team from Belgium, sponsored by a credit card company. And he's got a bit of a gap on the climb, but Pisiks here, the champion of Latvia, finding his body weight a bit too much for this climb. Massive crowd as we come across what will shortly be a crossroads, although I'm not sure we recognise it as such, as we continue over the top.
Well, they're not even halfway up the climb right now. Surprising to see Pisiks go off the back, because I thought he looked rather comfortable at that time. In second position, Erik Dekker not able to follow the pace here set by Van Steen. A very unknown rider, Van Steen, but riding today on home turf on the Tour of Flanders, looking to show himself off on TV. But you can see that this climb already, Phil, has split the group. Many riders going off the back for the moment.
Well, this is in fact Michael van Haken. He really is inspired on the climb. He's got a little gap on the field. Pisiks is gritting his teeth and hanging on. He's not going to give up without a fight. That is the crossroads there as we continue on. Van Heek here is forcing a group, about 8 riders, I think.
Ludo Dirksen now is moving up into second position. That's a big, strong rider. He'll be very much at home on these Flandrian roads. Dekker is in third spot right now. I can't see Christian van der Velde anymore, but I can see Daniele Nardello. The Mappe rider is in about 5th slot. Pisiks now wearing number 168. He's hammering to try and get himself back up to the leading group, but the leading group now is being led by Ludo Dirksen. This man is a very strong bike rider. On the stage of the Tour de France into Saint-Etienne, sitting very comfortably on his wheel, well up. You see how he's holding the handlebars right in the middle. Erik Dekker there is quite comfortable for the moment, shadowed by Baldato. There's Nardello coming up. Servais Knaven is in the group as well, and just tacked onto the back there is Christian van der Velde.
Yes, he's done well to catch on to that train. Dekker is here, as Paul has said, and Dirksen is the man that's causing a bit of pain now, but the 2 Mappe boys have got over there, Nardello and Zanini. That's the rest of the split.
Here's Matty White on the front of the split there. Very rigid on the bike, Matty White. He's a strong bike rider. Not quite as fluid as some other men, but I tell you what, when it comes to turning on the power, he's got a lot of courage to do that. He will keep riding and hopefully integrate the front group here, but this, Phil, is the hardest part to me of the Old Quaremont. It carries on and on and on until you come back up to the main road. They will then take a little turn to the left, and unfortunately for them, they drop down, and very soon they've got another cobble climb looming right up in their faces.
So then let me give you the names of the leaders here as we come up towards the top of the Old Quaremont. As we go back to the race now behind, as they're trying to get things on term. And that looks as though Andre Schmil is trying to get up there too. But the breakaway contains Michael van Heek, Erik Dekker, Christian van der Velde, Zanini, Danilo Nardello, Servais Knaven, Ludo Dirksen and Baldato also. They're the breakaway now.
Well, the pressure on the front of this group, it was Andre Schmil in about 4th position, but this is Peter Farazijn without Frank Vandenbroek on the squad anymore. They're free to ride their own races. Chris Peers is the rider in 2nd place there, but you can see there's still a very long line in this field. A lot of acceleration coming, but they are now slowly starting to approach the leading group now, which has been absolutely decimated on the climb of the Old Quaremont.
Well, there's some hard racing being done now by the riders that missed out on the initial selection today. Cofidis had no one there. They could do with a bit more help, possibly from Telecom, because of Zabel and Wesserman. But these two riders perhaps don't need any help just now. Chris Peers is an amazingly strong bike rider.
Well, they know this climb. They're getting towards the summit right now. Andre Schmil riding sensibly in 3rd or 4th position here. He doesn't want to use too many attacks right now. He doesn't want to use too much effort, as Peter Farazijn really not riding for himself over this climb now, really thinking much more about the team at the moment. A quick glimpse further back there, I caught the sight of Marco Serpolini. There is Giorgi Hincapie. Michele Bartoli is right here as well, the champion of Italy. So all the big names now being filtered up to the top of this group. There's Philippe Gaumont, the Cofidis rider, the Frenchman with the long flowing locks. And moving forward again, the pink and blue jersey, that was Maximilian Chiandri.
I think Rolf Sorensen shot through there as well, and so he's right on the nose. This is a very interesting little group of strong men. They've got to begin to make the moves now if they're going to catch up with the group in ahead, because that is eliminating the weaker riders as we speak, and there's a break of some 8 men clear at the front.
Little man on the back there for Mappé was Paolo Bettini. Surprising to see him being brought in to ride this event, because he's a man I would have thought would be saving himself for races like the Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which he won last year.
Well, next up we're on to the Peterberg, and that will come at 61 kilometres to go. So you see on the top left there, we're about 3 kilometres from the next climb. Now the Tour de Flanders really does begin. It is every man for himself, back with those 8 leaders, and it's just over 2 kilometres to the next one.
Well, it really is repetitive now. You just drop off the top of the Old Quaremont. There's 4 kilometres from the summit, and you can see here this is the demise of the Lotto squad right now. In fact, what we're showing here, Phil, that Pizix actually went off the road and had to stop. That's why he went off the back of the group there. He slipped on the cobblestones. He didn't fall, but he's lost contact with the group. So now we have a little explanation as to why Arvis Pizix got left behind.
Yeah, the trouble is, when you get on these cobblestones, they tend to steer your bicycle for you. It's not always the way you want the bicycle to go. Breathe in here as we get down to the narrow lanes and twists and turns. These roads so conducive to great breakaways because you're often out of sight now. But we're looking at the 8 riders who are shaping up. This is Van Heek, Dekker, Van der Velde, Zanini, Nardello, Knaven, Dirksens and Baldato. Pan back and see what's left of the rest of what was, don't forget, originally 22 riders. Here's Matty White in the group of chasers.
Just thinking then, Phil, when you said pan back, look for the riders, I was panning back looking for the road.
Absolutely.
The roads here in this part of Belgium are so narrow. De Waele and Van Heef, the 2 Lotto riders, are in this squad with Den Bakker. And Matty White, I think, quite happy now to sit at the back. He will leave the other guys to do the work because he has a man in the front split in the name of Christian van der Velde. He would also be happy if he could get the information from the main field behind, because Giorgi Hincapie is riding very much to the front of that main field with all of the major favourites.
Looking across the fields of Flanders now, we're into the little hills and deep into this wonderful area for bike racing. And the breakaway, this is the breakaway now with Van der Velde on the back. We're onto the Peterberg now, hill number 8. This is a brute 20% or 1 in 5. Although it's a 4-star hill taking us only up to 44 metres, it will hurt.
Very steep. The important thing is to try and get a good side road there. This is Baldato on the left-hand side, riding up the gutter. That's the smoothest part. Dekker is a long way back there, second from last in the orange and white jersey of Rabobank. And Christian van der Velde trying to ride up the cobbles and get as close to the front as he can right now. But the man on the front is Ludo Dirksen, the big, strong Belgian rider.
Now as our motorcycle goes through to have a look who's doing the work, it's not a surprise to us, is it, Paul? It's the Belgian boy, man who used to paint lorries for a living. And it is Ludo Dirksen. And look at this man go now. He grits his teeth and he just almost slaughters that bike as he tries to break this lead up.
This is the steepest part now, 20%. This is what they would call a strong boy. He's really giving it everything. Turned professional very late on in life, having worked, as you say, in a factory in here in Belgium. Right on his wheel is Daniele Nardello. He knows the right wheel to follow. But this man wants to split the race to pieces, and we've still got more than 60 kilometres to go to the finish line. He literally wants to dynamite this break and ride off the front on his own. He's not thinking about anything right now except just blowing up the Tour of Flanders.
The Belgians just love their sport. They know their riders, and there's nothing better for them when a Belgian rider is making the effort. It's Dirksens now over the top of the Peterberg. Arvis Pizzic again in trouble and dangling just a little bit, or is he coming forward to the remnants of the breakaway?
Well, he's coming forward because that in front of him is Eric Decker, so he's ridden across the gap there. He's caught Eric Decker, but Decker in fact has been left behind by the group, and he's joining there the back wheel of Michael van Heeke, who's riding very well indeed. But that's a surprise to see Eric Decker popped off the back of that group. But I tell you one thing, the man at the front was really hammering. The main field now are still on the Patersburg.
And this is Zeberg, the champion of Switzerland, trying to drag the Rabobanks back into the race here and turning the screw a little bit. So too Team Coast, and the crowd getting a second dose of action now. The bunch coming through here, and they're riding at about a minute and a half behind the leaders. And this is Marcus Zeberg as he now begins to power clear as he's had a wonderful climb.
Coming across to him is Andre Schmiel. You can just get a sign there of the Lotto rider in second position. It's very bumpy, the pictures we're getting right now, but that's because this is a very bumpy road and a very bumpy bike race. Schmiel coming round the corner there in second place, trying to ride onto the wheel of Marcus Zeberg, but they've got a lot of work to do, Phil, to catch up this leading group, who for the moment are doing a very workmanlike job.
Looking down on 6 riders here. These are the 6 leaders now. They've got rid of Decker, who has been, and also Van Heek, but those two have been joined by Arvis Pizzic. Here they are. These are the men who are making the race now. The Tour of Flanders, what it is. The only survivors of the original 22. There's the troublemaker, and that is the man from Lamprey, Ludo Dirksens rather.
Well, it's a tough ride now for these guys to try and hope to go out to the finish. Mappé doing a good job right now tactically. There's Stefano Zanini. Daniele Nardello is also there. Just going through the shot was Christian van der Velde. Servais Kanavan knocking his head from side to side there, Phil. He doesn't want to work too much right now. And here is the group of Eric Decker coming forward. So I think Decker may well have just had a hard time on the Patersburg there, and he's about to reintegrate the group with a lot of help coming from Arvis Pizzic.
Well, Van Heek is doing the ride of his life, number 181. He was a pile driver when they came up the old Quaremont. Detached a little bit on the Peterberg, but thanks to the big effort to the other 2, we're going to have 9 riders in the front now. And the next climb we'll come to is the Kortekeer, and we'll hit that in about 3 kilometres time.
Very difficult. What a great ride, though. That man who's just bringing them across the last few metres there, he didn't give up at all. You can see sitting in third position now is Pizzic. Van Heeke is doing a very good ride, and his team will be over the moon with the performance of him and the fact that they will have got a lot of publicity out of the Tour of Flanders today.
And he looks good. He looks good. He's read it right. He lost a little bit of strength on the climb, but he's come back nicely. 9 men now in front. Pizzic's had a bit of a rough ride these last couple of hills. Now let's see if he can settle in, because he's a pretty good bike rider.
Well, this situation now is looking pretty dangerous for the riders in the back, and the team who at one time had the best tactical position was the Lotto squad. They had 3 men in that 22-man lead group, and right now they've got nobody.
No, that's absolutely right. And 3 men up there. Here's one, though, trying to get back on terms. This will be Paul van Heefte. And he's trying to race across the gap on his own. He's certainly not waiting for anybody behind. As the crowd recognise him, Allez Paul, they're shouting at him onto the cobble. Do you think he'd be fed up with those, wouldn't you?
He's a great bike rider. He never gives up at all, Paul van Heeft. Does an awful lot of work for the team Lotto, and right now he just wants to make sure that Lotto have a representative in the front group, which is why he's trying to ride across this gap at the moment. He's had a hard time, but he won't give up. This is the Tour of Flanders. He rides for the #1 Belgian team Lotto. As we head through Zulzeke, looking back down the road, we get a chance to see if anybody else is coming forward right now. That's the group containing Matty White. They're around about 35 seconds behind at the moment, Phil, but in 4 kilometres they will have another climb to go, and in that group with them is Martin Den Bakker. On the back is Frankie Hoy.
Yes, and these 4 now having to just make a decision, I think, to keep the pace going. They've lost the the trace of the leaders. They know the bunch will come through sooner or later. As we follow these narrow roads, there we're getting through. Other riders still dropped, you see, as we make our way up to the 9 front men. This is Paul van Heeft, who's trying to get up to the 9 front men. Now, how much of a job has he got to do? Not that much, Paul. A good effort, he might make it.
The only thing that will go to his advantage is if these riders at the front slow down just a little bit before they attempt the next climb at Kortekeer. There's the composition of the group, and some big names now really being filtered to the front. Zanini, Baldato, Dirksens, Dekker. Those are all riders who could come up with a win here at the Tour of Flanders. On the back, Daniele Nardello, almost the ultimate domestique. He's never really been given a chance to ride for himself, but today in a situation like this, anything could happen.
Well, Zanini is not a big winner, but he does pick off the odd good one as he continues to ride like a tower of strength in this breakaway with Nardello, who is also a man who could win this. Baldato's twice finished second in Flanders. These are all still the riders of the original breakaway. They've lost a few friends during the start of the climbs, a quick succession of the climbs, but the field behind is still not really getting out of touch. Still around about those 90 seconds. Now we move on to the 3-star climb of the Kortekeer.
Around about 15% at the steepest part in the middle. Again, a very short climb, only 600 metres, as Pizix sits onto the back of this group now. He's going to hope to recuperate a little bit, Phil, because he's had a hard ride since the Old Quaremont to reintegrate the front.
Pizix looks very good when he gets back on there. He doesn't look... I know it's often deceptive when you look at a rider from behind, but he's giving nothing away. He looks as though he's still pretty cool and riding well. So too does Michael van Heek, who was the leader up the Old Quaremont. Paid for that on the Peterberg, and he's now back with the leaders as we approach the Kortekeer.
Well, just in front of them is Fabio Baldato. On the front of the group right now, the man setting the tempo is Christian Vande. He's obviously feeling very good here this afternoon. Chasing him down was Servais Carnarvon. Kortekeer at 15%, not a cobbled climb like some of the other ones, but still, when you've been going up and down in the saddle and over some of these climbs in Flanders for almost 200 kilometres, it certainly does start to weaken the thighs.
Well, sitting at the back of the climb now on the Kortekeer is the man who started all of the aggravation earlier, Michael van Heek. But now the pressure really on him to hang on, and that's what he's got to do as they go towards the top of this climb.
These riders, Phil, now will know that the main field is starting to react behind, and they will just hope that a group comes up and they can latch onto it. Eric Dekker here once again. Every time we seem to go uphill there, you can see the man who leads the Rabobank squad, Phil. He's in difficulty on every one of these slopes.
He is, and he's just hanging on in there till he gets over the top. Then he recovers so well. But the acceleration, just as they go up and over the top here, the crowd cheering them all of the way. They can tick that one off now. Here is the main chase behind, just on 38 seconds, so the big hitters are closing in as the leaders make their way over the top. Here's the chasers.
This is the group with Maddie White there. Martin Den Bakker is number 68. In front of him there, wearing number 2, is Fabien de Waele. And on the front of this group is the Team Coast man, the leader from that team today, Frankie Hoy. But the main field is accelerating behind. They are looking now to try and pull back as many of these leaders as possible.
So Martin Den Bakker sat here at the back now. There's 4 riders. Well, I suppose they really are in no man's land. They must be very impressed with the crowds, though, and the cheers they're all getting. I know this will inspire Matt White, who responds by getting out of the saddle. And this is the chasing group, just on 38 seconds. The gap to the 4 riders, the last survivors of the breakaway, that was 22, apart from those in front of them, because I think everybody else now has been swept up.
A lot of chaos at the back here. We're getting here Frankie Hoy trying to encourage Fabien de Waele to come to the front. But for these 4 guys, Phil, now I don't think they're ever going to see the front again. The only thing they've got in store for them is a group coming up from behind, and then they could possibly latch on and reintegrate the front. But this at the back is the main field now. The pressure's certainly on here as we accelerate to the summit of Kortekeer. Looking over his shoulder, this looks very much like one of the riders from Cantina Tollo, and this is Maximilian Schiandring next in line. On his wheel is Stefan Wesemann, and a little bit further back one of the riders from Faso Bortolo. But look at the way Schiandring is pedalling right now. He's looking very easy, but the main field is still all together.
There's Wesemann. He really does start to look as though he's quite good. Here is André Schmil, Michele Bartoli in his Italian Championship jersey, so the big boys are breaking through now, beginning to pierce the head of the race here. There's the gap. 48 seconds to the 4 chasers, and it'll be a little bit further to this group here. There's the world champion Roman Weinsteins.
And on his wheel there, in fact, is Georgi Hincapie as well. 101 for Cofidis. That is Nico Matin. And 1 or 2 riders starting to integrate. Those are the climbs left to go. Tyenberg, Eikenberg, Berendries. The toughest one of them all, the Mur de Grammont, just towards the end.
Yes, and now look at this general regrouping here, and the general slowing down too, just when it looked as though we were beginning to push on with some big names there. They're now all easing up again. There's Hincapie going through on the inside. Marcus de Berg in that red champion of Switzerland's jersey. It's a very interesting race. There's some tactics being played out within. Michele Bartoli here on the front, number 2 in line there, while the other rider is Gabriella Balducci of the Calderona, Vini Calderola team.
Well, in fact, Michele Bartoli very much in a defensive role right now, because he's got 2 riders in the leading group, 2 riders who both are quite capable of taking out the win in this race if they don't get pulled back, because Nardello and Zanini are 2 solid riders. 81 there, Yatislav Ekimov. His job today is to look after number 84, and that is George Hincapie. Hincapie looking very comfortable for the moment.
Hincapie's looking extremely strong. There he is, just passing through camera. Here is Vyacheslav Ekimov. Did so well to win the gold medal in the Olympic Games. He's had 1 now as an amateur when he rode for the Soviet Union, and 1 as a professional at Olympic level. Wonderful bike rider. As Hincapie knows, he will feel very confident riding on the wheel of Vyacheslav Ekimov. And it looks a bit like a horse race now. We've got them on both sides of the road, 2 separate packs going forward. These are the strong men coming through now. It's been such a very quick Tour of Flanders today. Back up with the leaders now.
Eric Decker in his favourite position, in last position there,
well,
as we come up to the next climb. This is a section of cobblestones called the Maria Borenstraat. It's 2 kilometres long. It's a very difficult section of cobblestones, but at least Eric Decker still is in at the front of the bike race, but he seems to be having an awful lot of difficulty, which is a surprise, Phil, because he started the season off very well.
Yes, Decker is a gritty professional bike rider, suffering on the climbs and fighting his way back to the leaders once he's over the top of them. And you'll always admire a man that does that. Baldato is just in front of him, and this is Van Heek, who is still there. He's one of the lesser teams, but he's certainly not one of the lesser riders today. He is having an inspired Ronde van Vlaanderen.
Baldato in the white jersey right in front of him. A man a little bit towards the end of his career, really, but a good team captain to have on a team like the Faso Bortolo squad. Decker moving further forward. This is supposedly a section of cobblestones, but it looks more like a climb to me right now, Phil. And Van Heek at the back is suffering here.
But he's hanging on, and the cobblestones will end very shortly. And he'll be still on the tail there of Zanini. And this little stretch of cobblestones now is one of the longest stretches. And there's word there that Nico Ekut, who was in the breakaway, had a flat tyre, has now given up. He's abandoned the race.
Well, there'll be a lot of discussion there with Lotte, because he was given almost a joint leader position with Andre Schmiel today after his fine performances in the early part of the season, but maybe the pressure may have gotten to him just a little bit. Stefano Zanini on the back, which is why in the main field Michele Bartoli, the champion of Italy for Mapei, is being forced to ride a fairly defensive role right now. And in that main field, Phil, for the moment, we have not seen anything at all of the other top Belgian squad, the Domo Farm Frieds team. We haven't seen Johan Museo or Wilfred Peters, or even occasional glimpses of the world champion Ronan Weinsteins.
Yeah, Museo never recovered from his very early crash out at Lost End, as Peter van Petegem was out of the race at that same point. He's never been able to impress today. That's sad for the 2 Belgian riders, because they have dominated this race over the years gone by. But today, because of those strong winds, a big group of 22 has ripped away from the field, and the chasers, the main field, the big names, what's left of the main field, are now making a big meal of bringing them back. Now, this is indeed Dirksen's. He's been attacking all of the time, now looks in the spot of bother.
I think he's now paying for all those explosive efforts he put in over the early climbs there. You can only do that so many times in a race like the Tour of Flanders, and maybe for Ludo Dirksen's he's done it 1 time too many. This is the second achtervolgers, the second group of chasers. This group contains Martin den Bakker, and just in front there in the blue, that is Matty White, the new signing for US Postal Service. And you get a chance to see what some of the roads are like here in Belgium. They really are quite atrocious, but this does make this Tour of Flanders a very dramatic bike race.
Yes, it certainly does. The chain bouncing around there, and the corner's not needed here as they turn left and then right. According to the top of our caption there, the Group 1 and Group 2. This is Group 2. There's a little demonstration of how the train is taking a pounding, and so too the body, of course, of these bike riders over the pavé. But it wouldn't be Belgium without those cobblestones, and long may they stay here.
Well, the riders next will be facing the climb of the Tyenberg, a very difficult climb, 18% at the steepest part, a very nasty climb. Again, very short, only 475 metres, only climbing up 45 metres in altitude, but certainly another tough one.
And still on the back there is number 181. He's a member of the Landbouw Credit team. And it is Michael van Heek, and still hanging on, but there's going to be another rush at this one. The Tyenberg now, he's lying just a little bit off the back. He'll do well to close up. He's done that. He's gone over the top of Servaes Kanavan. Kanavan is a crafty Dutchman, taking the smooth way up on the right-hand side of the cobbles there.
Very crafty indeed, because I'd actually forgotten he was in the group, for we hadn't seen him near the front or near the back at all. Just riding very sensibly. Van Hekke in difficulty. Christian van der Velde too, as once again is Erik Dekker. And surprisingly enough, Stefano Zanini has gone on off the back. But this is Phil, this is amazing. This man was off the back a few moments ago. Ludo Dirksen is again the strongest man on these Flemish climbs. In second position is Nardello, followed by him Baldato. But what a man today. He really wants to show off.
Ludo has got the bit between his teeth today and is thinking of a victory here. He is riding so well. This is Paul van Heefte still trying to get on terms with him, and he's not quite making it further down the slope. And this is the most orderly crowd I think we've seen in Belgium, Paul.
Well, it certainly is. There's a piece of rope just down the side keeping them off. The reason is just to allow the bike riders the possibility to ride up the guttering there, which is just a little smoother than the cobblestones in the middle. This is the Tyenberg, and Paul van Heefte has ridden for the last probably 15 kilometres trying to integrate the front group. This is the main field right now moving forward. Again, we've got the riders from Cofidis on the front. This looks a little bit like Joe Planckaert coming forward right now. It is Joe Planckaert, the son of the very famous Willy Planckaert and part of the great hierarchy of Belgian cycling at one stage. André Schmeel looking very good. Schiandri still there, Phil, in third place. I think Schiandri's got good legs today.
Well, let's hope you're right. Schiandri is a British rider, although he is spends all his life in Italy. He is André Schmeel, a winner of this race last year. Now hoping he can catch a few strong bodies and move across towards the leaders. There's still time to put matters to rights, there's no doubt about that. And Schmeel is the strong man, and this is the course for him. Here comes Max Schiandri riding extremely well. One of the Fassa Bortola riders also trying to get on terms.
It's a little bit like Tossato coming forward there. Schiandri in excellent form today. As you can see now, the front of the main field has been reduced to just 5 riders. An unbelievable effort put in there over the Tyenberg by Ludo Dirksen. And just getting himself onto the back of the group now, Servaes Kanavan, using a huge gear. He's representing the super Belgian team Domo Farm Friets, and it's funny because today it's a Dutchman they're going to have to count on.
Yes, and I'm sorry to see that Michael van Heek has missed out, unless he's just there in the distance. He was the rider that got dispatched. He's in fact the man behind those 2 chasers, so maybe he'll still claw his way back into the action here.
Number 13, Servaes Kanavan, the former champion of Holland, moving across this year from the TVM squad to join the amalgamated Domo Farm Friets team. A lot of shouting going on in the group here.
Yeah.
Ludo Dirksen, though, he's a big, strong rider, Phil, and I tell you what, he certainly can't put in too many more efforts like this. This is the remnant of the group. Christian van der Velde now clawing his way back up to the leading group. On his wheel is Zanini. Here is Erik Dekker, and there's your little favourite Van Heeke. There'll be a lot of talk about him in the Belgian bars this evening.
Good for those 4. Real hard effort. They have refused to give in, and we now have built the group to 9 leaders still surviving here, and still the breakaway from the main field, although they're very active, are not getting closer to this group. And that says a lot for this group today. There they are. That's the total composition. All familiar names now. Dirksen's enjoying life at the front on the climbs. I can't say the same for Dekker, but he always gets back, and he's back again.
Well, Dekker's a great bike rider, very courageous bike rider as well. I think a big change in his life since he took 3 stages at the Tour de France last year, and then after that went on to win the San Sebastian Classic. He probably started the day here, Phil, as somewhat of an outsider, which is why he's struggling to keep himself in contact in the back of this group, but he is in difficulty on all of these climbs.
Well, they've got themselves together. They look as though they're all working. Very often, Paul, when you're tired and hanging on, it helps if you just roll through and get yourself back into the rhythm, doesn't it?
Well, psychologically, it's much better to be able to participate in the pacemaking at the front. It hurts your mind if you have to sit at the back of the group like this, because you start to feel bad and then it gets even worse. We'll see how he handles the Eichenberg, which is the next climb coming up, another very difficult climb. It's steep at the bottom, then levels out with a false flat over the summit.
Well, that's just about a mile away now for the next climb of this circuit of the Little Bosses of Flanders, and there'll still be 5 more climbs to come after this one. Look at that average speed, 42.6 kilometres an hour. That is a tremendous speed today for the riders in Flanders.
US Postal Service on the front of this group, Phil, taking command of the chase right now, which I think may be a little bit optimistic, because there's still an awful long way to go at 48 kilometres from the finish line in Meerbeke. But obviously Hincapie feeling very confident right now. He has 2 teammates up the road. One of them is Christian van der Velde, who's in the front group, and then in a small group caught in no man's land at the moment is Maddie White, the Australian. But it is an awful long way up these Flemish roads to rejoin that group at the front, who will very shortly be on the slopes of the Eichenberg.
Well, this race this year, a full 3 kilometres an hour faster average speed than André Schmild's winning time last year so far. They did 39.5 kilometres an hour to average last time, but at 42.5 right now. And so it is a fast race today, and it's all been down to this breakaway. Here we are, hill number 11. 1 in 9, or 11%, takes us up to 62 metres above sea level. We've only given this 2 stars.
Well, I would give it a lot more than that, because almost 220 kilometres into the race, it is very difficult. 1,300 metres or 1.3 kilometres of cobblestones. And once again, there is Eric Dekker suffering at the back. You see, he's flicking across to the right-hand side, Phil. In fact, usually on a section of cobbles like this, the section of cobbles right at the end is just a little bit smoother than all of the others. So that's why he's trying to get onto those to roll a bit quicker. He's in difficulty once more, as is Baldato in the white jersey, and also Michael van Heeke. The pressure on the front, well, there's no need to ask the question who's doing it. It's Ludo Dirksen's again.
But they're getting a better ride at the back this time. The gaps are opening, but not quite so quickly, so they may not have a big chase back on this occasion. Just holding the left of the road, just a little bit of smooth tarmac sprinkled down the side. This is Dekker. Realised that Van Heeke is cracking big time, and he's gone round him. It's wise, because once that door opens, you may not shut it down. Then there's Baldato. These are the riders hanging on. There's Van der Velde. And they're saying back in the main field, one of the strongmen of Cofidis is a puncture, Nico Matan.
Well, this is the strongman of Lampre-Dakin, a former Belgian national champion, a winner of the stage at the Tour de France, and today riding an absolutely magnificent Tour of Flanders. Not thinking about how far away the finish is, Phil. All he's thinking about is riding as hard as possible and delaying what I think is the obvious, being caught by a group of favourites coming up from behind.
Well, we're running down to just about 27 miles to race now, and they still have not got across to this group, and they've been knocking on the door for literally hours today, but they're not coming over. And Dirksen's now, I think, is now going to try and ride everybody off in this race. Here is Paul van Heeft. We'd almost forgotten about him.
I'm actually beginning to wonder why he's doing this. He should either have sat up and waited for André Schmild's group behind, or definitely reintegrated the front group, which he is not doing at the moment. Second position there is Georgi Hincapie. He looks like a great classics rider now. Hincapie is certainly changing. It's amazing, Phil. He seems to have been around forever. He turned professional at the age of 19 after a magnificent win in the Tour du Pont stage down into the Homestead, where he was disqualified. It destroyed him at the time, but you know what? He's becoming a real solid leader for the US Postal Service team in the one-day classics.
Absolutely no question about that. He looks good, and he's marking, I think it might be Chris Pearce here at the front for Cofidis, but he is sitting there, George, waiting for the chance now. He can't overwork. He needs a bit of help to get him across to that lead group, and then he can try and do something, but he can't do anything yet.
There's a quick glimpse of the world champion in 3rd or 4th position there, wearing the white jersey with rainbow stripes on it, is Ronan Weinsteins. He's the man that Team Domo Farm Frites are looking after today. They want him to come up with the win. He was very close last year, and if there is a group of 14 or 15 riders come into the final finishing straight in Meerbeke, you better watch out for that man.
The big struggle at the back here, I think it's Michael van Heek. He's trying to get back on. He was the only one left that time. And so now he should get back, and we're going to have a very tenacious 9 riders. Terrific ride by Michael to get on, and there he is. He's back, so we've got 9 men again.
Well, he's got a bit of a rest now, but not too much. Around about 8 kilometres before we get to the next big climb of the day, and that will be the Leiberg. Not quite as difficult as the Eichenberg and Tyenberg, but we are at least on fairly smooth roads for the moment. Looking back here, a bit of chaos now on the Eichenberg, the main field coming forward. Chris Peers on the front, Hincapie looking very comfortable in 2nd position, and somebody caught out on the right-hand side of the road.
Listen to the cars now clearing the way, although the Belgians are being very orderly today, standing off the road here as the first chase group tries to now close the gap. The gap is coming down. We've still got Matty White's bunch at 44 seconds. Now we've got Andre Schmiel leading a counter-attack here at 1:17. And Hendrik van Dijk has also given up now.
Well, there's a little acceleration there coming from Andre Schmiel, but it's not going to do too much damage because the whole of the field, Phil, is still pretty much together. He looks over his shoulder and he can see the big long line of riders, and he isn't getting any help from too many of the other guys in this group right now. On the front is Chris Peers, 3rd place is the world champion, 4th place Georgi Hincapie.
They don't seem to be able to push this home. They're not organised in the pursuit. You get a strong man do a turn, looks up for help, nobody comes through. They have to reorganise. And a fall now for Nico Matam. Well, he's having a terrible day. First of all, he punctures and now he falls.
Not a big day, you know. When those days happen, you might as well go home. In fact, the Domo Farm Frites rider there with the helmet on, I think, was Johan Museo. But the attack now coming from the world champion.
Here he is, Roman Weinsteins, a strong powerhouse. But he still needs help, and he still wants help. He can't cross that gap on his own. It is coming down. It's barely a minute now. And so very soon they'll be picking up Matt White.
We're now looking at all the big names being filtered to the front, Phil, because that was Schmiel. In this group as well is Chandri, who's looking very good. On the far side, the former Olympic bronze medalist in Atlanta. Chris Peers is the big rider from Cofidis. And it seems now as if there's a bit more urgency coming into the riders at the front of this group. One of the riders from Taconi Sport trying to ride off the front there, and Chandri moving forward.
I have to say that Chandri looks absolutely superb today. He looks as though he's just riding along here, no effort whatsoever.
And not an easy start for the season either for Maximilian Chandri, because he'd signed up for the Linda McCartney squad, who he rode for last year, and unfortunately they pulled out before the season actually really got underway. They had one race under their belts, the Tour Down Under in Australia. They came back to the United Kingdom. They were expecting to have an official team launch in the City of London, and boom, when they turned up at the hotel, the bomb was dropped. There was no more team.
That was indeed the sad news which heralded the start of the year 2001 for British cycling as well. Anyway, sad to say that the team went, but most of the riders, if not all of them, have found places on teams around the world, and Chandri got his berth with Lamprey Dakin.
On the far side, one of the riders from Mercury Vietel, one of the very good signings that they've got, the Dutch national champion Leon van Bon. There is Rolf Sorensen sitting at the back of the group there for CSC Online, and I would say that US Postal must be very happy with the race so far. They've 2 men up the road, one of them Christian van der Velde, the other Matty White. Hincapie is in this group with Jatislav Ekimov, and so at the moment everything seems to be working in their way.
And a hand goes up here. I think it's Ekimov. Oh, he's just stretching out his back. It's okay. But everybody now must be feeling a bit rough because it's been a flat-out chase and they've not made the progress they would like. We're well in excess of 40 kilometres an hour, average speed. The sun is still coming through broken cloud, although the day itself is pretty chilly. And they're running out of time. They're going to have to make decisions very soon.
Johan Museo at the front looking round to see what situation is going to happen here.
Well, he's done well here, and now they're bringing through all the motorcycles, and the riders complaining a little bit as they see a whole flotilla of motorbikes go by, but they're regrouping. There's still no coordination here, and somebody's going to have to do it. Max has decided to take it on his shoulders. is that it's a Bortolami, isn't it, who's got onto the tail here of Max Chiandri.
Looks like the stocky figure of Bortolami. Chiandri definitely got good legs today. He's leaping out of the pack at the moment, hoping to get himself a little bit of a gap over the main field. That was Gianluca Bortolami, but they've only got 20 or 30 metres over the main field.
And they're being joined here by more riders now on the attack. This is beginning to look like it might get something together.
Well, this is good for Mercury, because this is Gerrit van Bont, who earlier in the day was involved in an accident with Pieter van Petegem, and he has now ridden himself into a small group trying to escape the clutches of the main field, which still contains most of the major favourites, including Hincapie and Johan Museeuw.
Well, only Pieter van Petegem out of the hunt today, a previous winner, and that was really sad for Mercury Viatel, who wanted a good performance today. They might still get it. 142 on your picture is Gerrit van Bont, and winner last year of the race down in Wevelgem. Again, Chiandri Paul is there. He's looking for a move now. He wants some strong riders with him, because it's the only way they're going to reach those leaders. And 48 seconds, I think that is still to Matty White's group.
Well, one of the riders from Cofidis coming across here, I think it was Chris Pears. The deficit is 48 seconds, and there's still 42 kilometres left to go to the finishing line.
It is Chris Pears. He's bridged the gap, so 4 riders, and these are exactly the riders that Max wanted. These are 4 good men, and now can they settle down and start to pull back those ahead?
Another problem at the back there for Cofidis, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear if again it must be Nico Martin. Not the day for him. He's had a back wheel puncture. 102 there. You can see Cofidis really under stress today, and in fact it's Peter Farazijn who's had a problem at the back this time, but the team leader Nico Martin has had all kinds of problems. 2 punctures so far and a crash.
Well, you've got enough problems just keeping up with the pace of the bike race. You really can't be bothered with punctures and falls to make it even harder. Heading up to the next climb, which is the Leberg, remember, and that will be hill number 12 today.
41 kilometres left to go now. That's inside an hour's racing before they get to the finish, and everybody realises that the most strategic climb of the day is going to be the Muur de Grammont, followed by the Bosberg, the last climb of the day, and that's where just 12 months ago André Schmiel was the super favourite there. He put the hammer down over the top of the Bosberg and rode very bravely away to the finish with a large group chasing him. Here's Maximilian Chiandri on the back of a very workmanlike group right now, but strangely enough, Phil, none of the big favourites, the super names before the start, have actually managed to slip into this group. But Chiandri's group not very far off the front of this group here, which in fact has been reduced somewhat over the last couple of kilometres.
And this is where the big names are at the moment, as we've just gone under the 40 kilometres to go banner there with the main field, 25 miles from the finish. Still a big group here with some of the big names, including 13 times a rider of this event, Rolf Sorensen, and the winner, and now riding for the first time for a Danish team who are fighting for a place in the Tour de France.
Riding pretty close to the front in the pink jersey is one of the pre-race favourites, Stefan Wesermann. You can see the red jersey with the white cross in it. That's Marcus Zerberg, the rider from Rabobank. They'll be quite happy just now with the way the race situation is. They have Eric Decker in the front, although every time we've gone uphill, Decker has been left behind. I caught a glimpse there of Frankie Hoy, so I presume Hoy has been pulled back into the fold. And again, it's US Postal Service on the front, Phil, doing a lot of work to try and pull this back together.
Well, it just shows you how much faith they've got in George Hincapie here, because obviously George must have indicated he still feels very good, and they say, right, then we drive and see what we can do for you, and that's what they're doing. Little stretch of 2,000 metres, 2 kilometres now on the cobblestones. Ouch.
Op de Kasseya, that's what the Belgians say. The Kasseya being the cobblestones, a long 2-kilometre section of cobblestones now coming down here. These roads really do hurt here in the Tour of Flanders, and looking down the road, we're looking for the leading group now as we go through Zegelzem. And there they are on the front of that group. It looked like Christian van der Velde still putting a lot of pressure in. 181 is our favourite at the back, Michael van Heeke. I don't think he'll end up being the winner of this bike race, but certainly he will be very popular with the Belgian crowds.
Decker still there and doing not so much work, but hanging on over this stretch of cobblestones. Now we're on the same stretch of cobblestones as the Hincapie group, and so they are closing in. There is a group in between containing Matt White at half a minute. They too are still riding superbly.
Well, I have a feeling that group of Matty White may well have been picked up, but you see the chaos there as the referees were pushing all the cars forward. That is because they feel that this group of 5 riders now is about to make contact. This is the group containing Chiandri and at the back there Paul van Havre. This group now is about to ride across the gap. This is Gianluca Bortolami in 3rd position, and just behind him in the white jersey of Farm Friets, Domo Farm Friets, is Gert van Bont.
Well, Van Havre has been picked up and is having trouble hanging on here to the flying thin legs of Max Chiandri up front. Gert van Bont is just in front of us, 142. He looks a bit podgy, doesn't he, Gianluca Bortolami, but riding very strongly, and there they all are for you. 3 Belgians, and it looks as though Van Havre's long and lone chase may now be paying dividends.
What a bike ride he's had today. He spent most of the race chasing to try and catch one group or another. There's the leading group just around the corner. The Chiandri group, Phil, is a lot less than 30 seconds. I would put it around about 10 seconds off the back of the leading group of riders. Now this is going to completely change the physiognomy of the course, because we will now have a much larger group. 14 riders will be reunited at the head of affairs, but 5 of them, well, I should say 4 of them, because Paul van Havre must be pretty tired right now, but the 4 coming across now will be a lot fresher.
Well, let's see. This is now climb 12, or onto the 2-star Leberg climb, and we're going on with 9 leaders, 5 chasers, and then a bunch of 14 to 20 riders coming up behind them. Here we are now. This is the junction on the climb, so we've got 14 riders here now all together on the climb. Van Havre is going bonkers on the back there to try and just hold on, as at the front now it looks like Nardello, who is going very quickly. He's decided to hit those riders straight away.
16% here on the Leberg. Right in 2nd position is Ludo Dirksen. He won't know yet. There's been a couple of riders come back, but those riders, Phil, got back at the very wrong moment. Chiandri there just slowly clawing his way back onto the tail of the group. The move by Nardello did absolutely nothing at all except delay the arrival of Max Chiandri in the front group.
Well, at least Dirksen's looked over his shoulder, might well have seen his teammate Max Chiandri coming on. Whether he'd be pleased or not, we'll find out, because of course at the moment, up until now, he's been having the stage to himself. Van Havre riding extremely well. I think he's on the limit absolutely now, but he's still hanging on to the tail of this group, which is now 14 strong, and the attacks have started again.
Another move going off the front. I think that was Chiandri going forward there right now. I can't see the other Lampre-Dakin rider in this group at the moment, so Chiandri may have tried to go right over the top there of this group. Chiandri it is. He's been reeled in there by Daniele Nardello in 2nd position, and once again they've put poor little Michael van Havre into difficulty.
So this is the group now, and Gianluca Bortolami has joined the group, and look at this, the split. It looks a little bit closer because of the cameras, but indeed that group looks as though we could have a massive bunch here very shortly, and that is unthinkable in the Tour of Flanders.
Well, the work and responsibility of the chase has been taken up by US Postal Service. That's Yatislav Ekimov, the Olympic time trial champion on the front there. On his wheel is Georgi Hincapie. Riding close to the front there is Andre Schmiel and the reigning world champion Ronan Weinsteins. Further down the group, these guys are just scrambling to stay in contention. The pressure now is starting to come on, and they will all be thinking, Phil, a little bit further up the road, around about 20 kilometres, I would say, to the Muur de Grammont, the Muur of Heradsbergen, and the Kappelmuur, as it's nowadays called, and the final climb of the day, Bosberg.
Just 4 climbs to go, and they are toughies, all of them. There is a huge group making very quick progress now. Look at the gap, 26 seconds to what we are now calling the peloton, the main group of cyclists. And if they come across, it is going to be a total free-for-all.
It will be, because all the big names now are in that group, Phil, just behind the names that we were talking about before the start. It's a very long line. The hammer is absolutely down. The charge being led by US Postal Service, and I would think before we come to the next climb of the day, it will all be back together.
We're about 2 kilometres from the Berendries. That's the next one, Hill 13. It might not be lucky for some of these riders now. 14 riders just ahead of the main field, and that main field has been growing steadily. There's a lot of riders down there right now. There's the speed on the right, 66 kilometres an hour. That is about 45 miles an hour they're riding at the moment.
Acceleration coming on the front here. This is Bortolami, matched very easily by Ludo Dirksens. What they're trying to do right now is split the group. A man we saw earlier in difficulty, Arvis Piziks, well, he seems to have recovered a bit over the last few kilometres, Phil, because he is always on the tail end of the front part of these splits. Daniele Nardello is the man in here for Mapei, and Chiandri now has been caught out by his own teammate who's covered the move.
Let's have a look at the face of Piziks. He's had a yo-yo situation all day today. When he made that mistake on the old Quaremont, it took it out of him to get back, but get back he did. Max Chiandri is up here. This is Nardello.
Fabio Baldato is the other man making up this leading group. Another man not to miscount when you come down to the finish line either, because he's finished second before in the Tour of Flanders. It's a race that he does appreciate, and if it comes down to a fine sprint to the finish, then he will be looking to try and get himself one place better than he got a few years ago. Chiandri just pushing Bortolami onto the tail of the group. 6 leaders now, 7 leaders at the front of the bike race, but the main field, Phil, look at that, only 20 seconds.
This is going to be an enormous scramble on the Berendries, because we're only 20 miles from the finish when we get onto that climb. We're not very far from the Berendries right now. In fact, we should be starting it as soon as we clear the town, and it's going to be a massive scramble. This is the coming together of the breakaway again, which keeps on breaking up now. 14 men back in front. The gap now is 18 seconds, Paul, and it's coming down almost as we speak.
Well, it's got to come back together on Berendries, I would say, because Berendries is one of the critical climbs of the day. There's a sign indicating we're about to reach the foot of Berendries. It's a tarmac road again, a very smooth surface, 14% at the steepest part for an average of 7%, but it's almost 1 kilometre in length, and if you've got the legs, it's a very good place to launch an attack.
Absolutely. Well, who's going to do it? My bet Will Dirksens will go again. He's hit them in every possible climb, and he's seen now a teammate come up here, so they've strengthened their claim at the front as they start to really hit these hills quickly now.
Looks like Chiandri's the man on the front, taking the tempo up just a little bit, trying to keep it nice and high, and hope that once again they will split this group. It is Chiandri, looking very good. He's got great pedalling action today. He's being covered by fellow Italian, although Max Chiandri carries a British passport. He's very much an Italian in spirit. Nardello is in second place. Gianluca Bortolami is there in third place, and Stefano Zanini has popped at the back of the group there. He's going out, as is Fabio Baldato.
Oh, they've hit it hard at the back. The hills just brought them to a grinding halt as Max Chiandri now starts to step on it. Nardello looks as though he's got his measure right now. That's Bortolami in his slipstream as he's keeping going. And I think Piziks is still in the picture here. And this is Dirksens, not the sparkling legs he had a couple of climbs ago, but he's only just behind.
Well, Chris Pears is the rider in there for Cofidis. Let's not forget, Phil, that those guys that rode across were not part of the original 22-man break, so they will have much fresher legs for these very difficult, savage, explosive climbs. Eric Decker now suffering in the orange and blue jersey of Rabobank. He's had a hard time today. He's ridden himself back into the bike race on many occasions, but I think finally he's had the last nail put into his coffin.
And Van Eyck is behind him. Now this is Piziks at the tail end of the split. The group has split as they continue now to apply the pressure, and it's all under the impetus of Max Chiandri. I think that was Decker slipped through under the camera. That man refuses to give up today. Look at the face of Max Chiandri. He is feeling good. That is clearly obvious. Bit further back down, but only by a handful of seconds, is Roman Weinsteins, the world champion, and pacing last year's winner, André Schmil.
Well, while Chiandri's attacking at the front, you've got their main field being attacked as well. Roman Weinstein's now taking responsibility as the leader of the Domo Farm for each team, but he's being very much marked today by the man in the red and black strip there of Lotto. He's up into second place, André Schmil. He's looking over his shoulder to see if he's done any damage there, and I can tell you haven't done much, because this is still a very large group with still only 3 climbs left to go. The next climb of the day in about 6 kilometers time is Ten Bosch, but I think, Phil, they must all be thinking now about the Mur de Grammont to make their move.
There they are, the leaders on the 1 in 10 climb. We've just seen that they've split up the breakaway yet again. They're spread all across Flanders once more now. This is a desperate scramble to try and steal this great race, and what a good race it has been today, because the Stars, for a strange reason, have always been on the defensive, and they are still trying to put things to rights.
They're all marking each other for the moment. Every time one of them goes off the front, he has one of the other favourites on his wheel, but they don't seem to want to take up the pacemaking at the front. Georgi Hincapie is still locked in that group as well with Schmiel and Roman Weinsteins, so he is obviously still in with a chance. The big move now, Phil, I feel certain has to come on the Mur de Grammont, but you never know. The Ten Bosch is a very difficult climb, and that's in around about 5 kilometres from now. As we see this group swelling across the road, that means that there must still be 1 or 2 riders off the front.
It is amazing. This group has shut down again, and that's the wrong thing to do as the other riders continue on their way, and that breakaway once more is going to stretch out if the bunch start to play around like that. We've got another attack down there at the moment.
This looks like Paul van Heefte.
Well, he's gone again.
He's unbelievable, this guy. He's been off the back or off the front for nearly all of this bike race at the moment. But I think if we tilt a little bit further up the road, we will see 1 or 2 more riders, because as far as I'm concerned, Maximilian Schiandri should still be in the leading group of this bike race.
There's still a group up there. There were 14, but they've split up. But Schiandri's still up there with some, and I think Pizix is up there as well, and a few other names, probably Nardello. They should still be there. Van Heefte was dropped. He's having a little dig again. This is a very strange Tour de Flanders, but it's a very good bike race today.
Another group. This is the front group now. The attacks are coming thick and fast at the moment. Everybody's trying to split the size of the group. They're feeling now, Phil, that the size of this group is too unmanageable. Christian Vande Velde there. Michael van Heecke has gone on the attack. Well, that's a great move by him. We've seen a lot of him. This is Dirksen responding. Schiandri's in 3rd place. He should sit up now and give the advantage to his teammate.
I'm not sure they're working quite well enough together to do that, but Dirksen's the strong man, been sent out to catch Mr. Rubberman himself, Van Heecke. He has been superb today, and he doesn't know when to say no. He's now pushing the attacks here at 19 miles from the finish. Slowly but surely, this little group is coming together again at the front.
Well, Fabio Baldato appears to have recovered as well, because he's driven back. Now, counter-attack by Schiandri. This is the time to hit them, just after you've chased, to bring back a small group, and this could be the move that Schiandri wants. It's an awful long way to go to the finish right now, but if these guys start to watch each other and he can build himself an advantage of 30 or so seconds, this could be good for Schiandri.
Well, he's having a good race today, that's for sure. Schiandri's opened the gap. He's being forced for others to close it down. This looks like Chris Peers is having to drive it shut. Just mind the motorbike, Chris, as he goes through with Nardello and Pizix. And that looks like we've got another group going.
Well, this is a pretty dangerous move by Pizix. This man we saw crash on the Old Quaremont, have to put his foot down to the ground, rode his way back through the groups, and now he's in the leading group of 4 riders. Schiandri has been joined there by Peers. He hasn't looked over his shoulder there, but he does need to have cooperation from the other riders in this group. Nardello, I think, suffering a bit. You could see him shaking his thighs there, just trying to get a bit of lactic acid. Ooh, and this is what it's like in Belgium. You've got to keep attentive.
Oh, it is absolutely mad, isn't it? This is the Tour de Flanders. The motorcycle almost trying to go down the way the bike riders went there. It could have been difficult for him. It is such a superb race here. Arvis Pizix, the champion of Latvia, now has caught onto the tail of Nardello, Chris Peers, and he's a British rider, Max Schiandri, who's doing the driving.
Well, we're now in the town of Brakel, and if you've ever been to Belgium, it seems as if every road leads to Brakel. This is the hometown of Peter van Petegem. The leading group of 4 now, Phil, don't have much of an advantage, only about 100 metres, and very shortly they will be turning into the corner, which will take them onto the third from the finish climb, and that climb is going to be the very difficult climb of Ten Bosch.
Yes, and that'll come in about 27 kilometres to go, so we're almost on it now. And that's the next obstacle, and these attackers, it'll be advantage them. They're right on the rivet, that's for sure. We slip back here. This is the second group on the road, and Dirksen is in that. As so too, I saw there was Dekker. And who is this coming up? This is Geert van Bont coming through. These colours still confusing me a little bit, the new Mercury Viatel colours. They're not together. When they're not together, Dirksen's attacks.
Dirksen's moving across to a little counter-attack which has gone off the front, and old Dekker there on the back. Where's 61? What a day he's had trying to stay in the front of the Tour of Flanders all the time. He's been dropped so many times, and I think Geert van Bont has decided, well, I'll sit up and wait for the main pack because the legs are starting to sting just a little bit too much. I think, in fact, that attack there, Phil, was coming from Rolf Sorensen, and I've not seen him all day.
Well, he's been coming through steadily but surely and watching, as Rolf often does. He knows when to hit them. He's one of the best race readers. That's Sorensen there, all right. This is now the climb at 10 Boss, a 14% climb up to only 37 metres. Fairly short, 600 metres in length. A 2-star climber at this stage of the race. These legs now full of lactic acid. This has been pressure, pressure, pressure all of the way. There's been nobody soft pedalling here in these leading riders.
Chris Pearce making his move now over 10 Boss, moves over to the right-hand side of the road, but Chandry's having nothing of it. He's accelerated very easily, but you know, I think the group is going to come up from behind, Phil, because they've nailed it back to about 20 or 30 metres.
But what we haven't seen, Paul, and we're just about realising, is the peloton is knocking on the door, sending emissaries up to the leaders, but the main field are not getting on. They are still hovering just behind. It's amazing.
Very strange. I would have thought that they'd have nailed it back. The main field came to around about 20 seconds. In fact, there's 12 seconds now to this second group on the road, and the man you can see there trying to claw his way back into the Tour of Flanders once again is Eric Dekker. The main field themselves are 42 seconds behind, so they're actually losing ground at a critical part here of the Tour of Flanders.
Well, they lost one or two of their sharp-end men. In Max Chandry, Rolf Sorensen was there, and I think he's also come out now, and so maybe they're losing some of the main train drivers back there who are getting up to the leaders. A left turn off the climb at 10 Boss now, which means that we're heading on towards hill number 15, and that'll be the wall itself, the Muur of Grammont. Absolute brute, Paul. We rode up that. That was pretty good, wasn't it?
Well, you rode up it. I actually watched.
It's a brute. Your nose literally touches your front wheel. It is so steep.
It's actually fortunate today for the bike riders because it is dry out on the course. I have ridden over the Muur de Grammont in race conditions several times in races like the Tour of Flanders, Tour of Belgium, etc. And if it's dry, it isn't such a bad climb. If it's wet, you have a hard time actually keeping traction in your wheels trying to go up the Muur de Grammont. And it's a lot harder nowadays than when I used to race because they've actually added on an extra 500 metres. When you get to what you think is the summit and what used to be the summit, you take a nice little right-hand turn and they take you right up to the chapel on the top.
Hence its new name, the Kapelmuur, the chapel wall. And now we're heading for that climb next. We'll be coming into the town of Gerardsbergen.
We've got a long section of smooth road now, around about 12 kilometres from the top of 10 Boss to the foot of the climb of the Muur de Grammont. And you can see right now that Chandry is very nervous indeed. He's trying to accelerate. He's looking for help to come from these riders to try and build on the advantage they have over the group behind. But the group behind is very large indeed. In fact, they're right there.
They're right there, and we're going to see a coming together again, which will give us a good double-figured breakaway. They keep on rebuilding. Here's our man again. Paul van Heeft is coming back up to the front line. This is amazing.
Great ride by him. He's done a fantastic job. He really has suffered. He's ridden so courageously. And you know, this is something that the Tour of Flanders is made about. It's all about courage. It's all about fighting back. You can sit up very easily when you have a spot of bad luck. But in the Tour of Flanders, if you've got the courage and the legs, you can keep fighting back all of the time. That was the neutral service vehicle there, passing him up a drink as he gets onto the back of the group. And it's all back together once again. And this is a very large group heading down towards the Muur de Grammont.
And it looks like we've got 13 riders come together all of a sudden at about 25 kilometres from the finish, and again the attacks start and off they go once more. There is no rest here. We are seeing 110% committed pro bike riders today. They don't know when to say no. They are scrabbling for wheels. I don't believe any one of them is having an easy ride. They are all now on the rivet, as we would say, and this man never knows when to say no. This is Ludo Dirksens, and he's pushing on again.
He really is. He's hammering at the front there. You can see the little bands on his jersey indicating he's been a former champion of Belgium. They're all actually now looking for some cooperation because they realise, Phil, we've got a very long section of smooth road from the top of the 10 Boss to the Muur de Grammont, and they need to actually work together. There is Sorensen trying to organise them, very old, experienced bike rider calling for some help, but Chandry doesn't want that. He can see there's no cooperation here. He's going to try and do it alone.
Another great effort by the Anglo-Italian. Max Chandry is gone when he heard all the cars coming up for words of wisdom. He decided to go and see if he can reduce this breakaway. He doesn't like so many riders up front, and he's got the gap again. Now it's up to them.
Well, somebody's coming across. They don't want Chandry to ride all the way to the finish. This is the town of Parijke. Just at the top of this little rise here, there's a left-hand turn, and it levels off for a little bit longer.
Now there in the distance is Chandry. Somebody has gone after him.
Chris Peers doesn't want that to happen either, because he's launching a counter-attack just now. There are two men in front. Dirksen playing the teammate for the moment, getting onto the wheel there of that attack by Chris Peers. And you can see the little sign from the farmer there. This is the Ronde van Vlaanderen. This is the Tour of Flanders.
He's done a good bit of work there as the race goes by. He must have known the helicopter would have been flying at that point. Vispizik's now driving along. They're not allowing anybody any chance to catch up with this breakaway. Christian van der Velde is still in this group.
In the back there, number 71, that's Gianluca Bortolami. Amazing to see Rolf Sorensen, because I really don't know when he came across at all, Phil. He just seems to have appeared from absolutely nowhere.
He just appeared, he came across, it was a late chase and he's latched on, and now got a whole new ball game here.
There's another rider appearing in this group here as well, a Liquigas rider who we haven't seen before. That is Denis Zanetti, who's come across there. This is very strange. I think what has happened is the main field at one stage got to within 20 seconds, and a couple of riders must have leapt across, Rolf Sorensen being one of them and Denis Zanetti being another. It just goes to prove that a lot of the big names, Phil, like Andre Schmeel and Ronan Weinsteins, they're actually sitting in the field watching themselves, and that may mean that George Hincapie is a prisoner in that group.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Zanetti and Sorensen crossed the gap together in tandem. They've come on and latched on. The others haven't made it. Now, they've lost a strong workhorse in Sorensen back in that chase group as well, and also Denis Zanetti. And so I think now we might well be seeing the end of the main field, but it's up to them. They have only one chance now. That's to turn on the power on the climb of the wall. Then on the last climb of the day, they're going to have to try and jump across.
Well, that's what they're all thinking about now as we reach 21 kilometres to go. It's 5 kilometres now to the Mur de Grammont. That's around about 3 miles. The main field now, containing all of the favourites, Phil, are thinking about their strategy coming up to the Mur de Grammont. But this is something they should really put to one side, because it's no good having a strategy if there's a group of 14 riders off the front of the bike race.
We are running into the last 12 miles of what has been an extraordinary Ronde van Vlaanderen this time around. And the big boys have not yet worked out what they're going to do with all the attacks that have been thrown at them all day long. This is a superb Tour of Flanders this year. We're looking down at the remnants of this race, yet they're all in contention. They're all right there if they can just find the big effort. And there again, I think it's Paul Van Heef still trying to get back on terms.
Tough ride, they'll be talking about him tonight. Here's a select group of riders coming across now, and if we can get a look in there, I can recognise the shape of Georgie Hincapie. There is the world champion Ronan Weinstein. Stefan Weseman is on the back. There is Nico Martin riding there as well for Cofidis. So this is the move we've been waiting for, Phil. This is the move of the big names of the Tour of Flanders.
Martin, the rider there to the right of our picture now. He's a Belgian, rides on a French team. He has had an horrendous day. He's fallen, he's punctured, he's got back up, and he's now still in with a chance. That's the group. That's the only group left with any chance of picking up the rest of the riders in the Tour of Flanders. There's a group of 3 there. They should go back into the chase group. Then we go up around the corner. We're looking now for a handful of race leaders. This is a remarkable race.
Well, those are the leaders right now. News coming forward from all of the team managers to let them know that there are 8 riders coming across and 8 big names in the sport of international cycling, because certainly that group of 8 now, Phil, is the creme de la creme, and they should, in theory, catch up with this group, because I made their deficit at around about 30 seconds.
There are the leaders. I make it 3, 6, 9, 10 of them. There are 3 chasers, including Paul Van Heef. There are 8 riders behind them. You can throw a blanket over them all, and we're in the last 12. In those 8 chasing, Weseman, Schmil, Weinsteins, Hincapie, Balducci, Martin and Bartoli. They are the only riders, I think, now in with a chance to affect the destiny of the pacemakers.
Very shortly, this road will tilt slightly downwards into the outskirts of the town of Gerardsbergen, Grammont as it's known in French, and then the riders will be on that very long climb up to the summit of the Mur. A lot of panicking going on here too in this group. Riders looking over their shoulders. They know this is the final major obstacle of the day, and they want to try and get there before that group of 8 favourites come. Looking further down the road, we're looking for the group of Van Heefte. And it's quite a long way. That obviously has been picked up, because this is the group now of Georgie Hincapie and the world champion Ronan Weinsteins.
Yes, they have, because there are now 11 chasers facing the 10 front runners, and they're all the riders now who affect this year's Ronde van Vlaanderen. 21 riders, that's all that's left in with a shout. And that group now, let's have a look at the gap. As we enter Gerardsbergen, we race across the town square and then we go up the cobbles to the chapel. It's a big gap still, Paul.
Well, it's a big gap. It's around about 40 seconds. This is the bridge over the railway line, and very shortly they'll be right in downtown Gerardsbergen. Everybody's looking over their shoulders now. They want to know the position. They know the big reaction must surely come, but they are in town, and the road now will kick upwards for the Muur de Grammont, the most famous climb in the Tour of Flanders, the one where many riders have laid the foundations of their victory. 51 there on the back, 61 I should say. Eric Decker, he's been at the back on every climb so far. I wonder what he's going to think about the Muur.
I wonder what he's thinking right now, because we're going through the pedestrianised area of Gerardsbergen, and then they will just flick over the square, start to climb on good road, a right turn, and they hit the cobblestones and it rears up. And if you've not been feeling too good, you're going to feel pretty nervous right now.
Everybody will be getting nervous. This is the chasing group now, containing the big names, the men who are looking to win the Tour of Flanders. And in fact, I have a feeling that in that chasing group you will also find a certain Johan Museeuw, which is remarkable considering he was involved in that early crash of the day.
Well, I haven't caught sight of him, but here's the crowd in Gerardsbergen, the right turn as we go round. And still the pressure on. It looks as though Decker, sitting at the back here, is going to be the first one to be dropped. Max Schianri is at the front. He's going to show them the way onto the climb. This is always the climb of the Tour of Flanders, and today it is going to surely play its role. On the left of our picture, Dirksens, the two Lamprey boys, get to the front. Dirksens, the powerhouse, is going to use that brute strength again.
Putting the hammer down one more time. Christian van der Velde is still in this group at the moment. You can see him in fourth position. We haven't even got to the steep part of the cobblestones, and Ludo Dirksen wants to dynamite the race again. Big power, huge gear going round. Schianri comfortably in second place. It's always good psychologically to have a teammate in the group. Daniele Nardello is in third spot from Mapei.
Look at the face there, the jaw set of Dirksens. His teammate Schianri just riding in his slipstream, letting him set the pace here. Might be planning an attack towards the summit, and Nardello is in there as well. He's a very good rider, the Italian, right in the centre of our picture right now.
Well, I think Dirksen has blown it there. He's blown one or two riders off the back. This is Sorensen in the red jersey and Eric Decker in the orange and blue jersey. Two new leaders taking over the chase now as they get to the Muur. 20%. I thought Dirksen had blown it because he was moving backwards, but he's gone right to the front once more.
1 in 5 the climb. This is the 5-star one, the Muur de Grammont, the Kapelmuur. We go a bit further, as Paul has explained, and Dirksens is now beginning to break some of the determined boys at the back. There is Sorensen. Remember, he's a late arrival at the front here, and well, we expect Decker to go off because he has on every climb so far, but he's also got back.
Well, Servais Carnarvon is the man in the light grey jersey of Domo Farm Frites. He'll be expecting to see the return of the world champion, Ronan Weinsteins. Denis Zanetti is the man from Liquigas on the front. Now, he is a late arrival in this leading breakaway, and he's obviously got very fresh legs right now. He's taking over the pacemaking, but Schianri still, Phil, looks very concentrated. As you can see, the face on Ludo Dirksen really is suffering. If you get a good glimpse at Dirksen's face, by the way, his nickname in the peloton is Popeye.
It's absolutely true, but he is a lovely man. As I say, we've had a few nights with him this week in the hotel, but he is storming right now. And Zanetta is setting the pace. Schianri looking extremely cool in second. Chris Pears in third. Nardello moving up in fourth. There's go Dirksen's fifth. Bortolami sixth. Then comes Sorensen, Decker, Van der Velde. That's the breakaway. It is a great ride too by Christian Van der Velde today.
Well, Christian Van der must certainly have chicken skin, as they say in professional cycling game. He really must have the hairs on the back of his neck sticking up to be in such company so close to the finish of the Tour of Flanders, but he's suffering now. He's rocking and rolling all over his bike there, trying to just stay in contact with this leading group. Denis Zanetti, Phil, is making a super impression on me. He is really looking very comfortable on this tough climb.
Well, this is the excess now, the little extra they added on. There is Christian. You almost want to pedal the bike with him as he heads up towards the chapel gates and begins the descent over the top. Only one more climb left now for the top men in the Tour of Flanders. Further down the slopes here now, I think it's Maignan who's coming up the climb there for Française des Jeux, but the leaders are over and there's still no sign of men like André Schmiller, George Hincapie.
Well, I think we must have missed them because they were certainly over the top of the climb. But I think the action really going on here at the front. These riders now going over the top of the climb at Grammont, a little bit of tarmac road, and they will drop down now into the town of Bosberg, the town where Edwig van Hooijdonk used to live, and a certain man by the name of Johan Bruneel used to live here as well. But he's not here at the Tour of Flanders today. The team manager for US Postal Service is Dirk de Mol. Bruneel has moved down to Paris to link up with Lance Armstrong, where they'll be taking part in the Circuit of the South.
So Lance continues his preparation. He will be making one classic appearance, by the way, the one he likes, the Amstel Gold Race, so that's something to look out for. That'll round up the early season racing in World Cup events. And talking of World Cups at the moment, well, we haven't seen a hide and a hair of Erik Zabel all day. I'm not even sure whether he's still in the race right now. But the way it's working out at the moment, if Bortolami keeps a position in this group, he could be the next wearer of the white jersey of leader of the World Cup.
Well, Maximilian Sciandri is on the front there, the Italian Denny Zanetti trying to encourage the other guys in this group to move forward and work. There are a lot of Italian riders present in this breakaway group right now, and it's very much 3 against 2. The 2 Belgian riders have made the group as well. Ludo Dirksen is there, as well as the other rider, Chris Peers, who rides for Cofidis. This is a chase group trying to come back with Christian van der Velde in second position on his wheel, wearing 71, Gianluca Bortolami. And once again, trying to scramble back into the Tour of Flanders, 61, Eric Decker.
Unbelievable, this man. And once he's over the hill, you see, his legs come back good. He's strong still. Continuing to race across the gap. Christian van der Velde, Bortolami, Decker, and I think they're going to make it back again.
Well, that is remarkable. This race has split to smithereens so many times, and every time it has come back together. The 3 riders we're looking down on there are Decker, Bortolami and Christian van der Velde, and very shortly they will be on the slopes of the final climb of the day, the Bosberg.
Well, that comes at 13 kilometres ago. They're virtually on the climb right now. It won't be long before they start. This might be the swan song of Decker, because the climb might be coming back just a little bit too soon after the big one there. There's Sorensen. Sorensen is back, the wily old man, in his 13th race. Maybe this is going to be the lucky one. If he can survive over the top of the Bosberg, he is contacting the leaders again.
Well, two riders from Lampre-Dakin in the front group. That gives advantage, really, to Max Sciandri and Ludo Dirksen. I would expect Ludo Dirksen to start thinking about working for Sciandri in the sprint at the moment, because he's done so much work out on the roads of the Tour of Flanders, Phil, that he must really be feeling a bit weary in those legs of his. But you can see Sorensen having a hard time closing down the final 20 metres.
Yes, those legs must be screaming right now. Sorensen's done a great ride just off our cameras, unfortunately, when he joined the front group with Dennis Zanetta. And now we've got the chase behind, and Van der Velde is coming back as well with Decker and Bortolami. This is going to give us 9 men again up front, and still the bunch is hovering and not getting anybody over.
Great ride by Christian van der Velde in the blue jersey for US Postal there. He's about to make junction just before we start the final climb of the day, the Bosberg, and his legs are going to scream at him as he sees the sign, climb number 16. Once again, a regrouping at the front of the main field. The Bosberg is only 475 metres long, but it's at the top that it's its steepest at 12%.
Yes, it's a little bit of a curly. This one kicks at the end. And a 3-star rating by the organisation. This is Servais Knaven. This is the chase group, because the world champions here now. So Paulo Servais has been picked up at last, they'll say. He was in the original 22. As Vesterman goes through at the front of this with George Hincapie. Now these are the riders. They've blown out just about everybody from the bunch, and they still can't get close to the leaders.
Well, these guys really are the heads of state. A quick glimpse there, you can see the champion of Italy's jersey. That's Michele Bartoli, world champion. This really is the heads of state of the sport of professional cycling, and they're only 20 seconds behind right now this leading group, which has regrouped once again as we start the cobblestones of the Bosberg.
And this is remarkable, because back on the tail here is number 61. It's cobblestones now as we start the climb of the Bosberg, and Eric Decker and Christian van der Velde, if they can just hold on over the top of this climb, are going to be in for the ride of their lives, I think.
Somebody's got to attack right now because the group is very large. The attack is coming there from Denis Zanetti with the yellow sleeves on his black Liquigas jersey. He's decided to try and blow all the Belgians out of the water today. The reaction is coming from Daniele Nardello and, of course, Chris Peers in the red and white jersey of Cofidis. Denis Zanetti, Phil, is looking exceptionally strong. He's the kind of rider who could ride away alone to the finish just now, and he's popped one or two riders off the back. There you can see is Rolf Sorensen getting left behind, as is Christian van der Velde and Dirksens. Look at this, digging deep. He doesn't want to get blown out in the Tour of Flanders, but I think he may well have done just a little bit too much work early on.
He has been a powerhouse, Dirksens, and now we've got Chris Peers from Cofidis on the right too, Nardello. And Zanetta is there, Bortolami and Max Chandry hanging on at the back with Dirksens chasing him. Then there's a split now to Rolf Sorensen here and Dekker and Van der Velde. These are the names who have made this a marvellous race today.
Good move by Chris Peers over the top. This is the main fielder right behind. And what a left group of riders it is. Schmiel is right in there. Stefan Weseman, the world champion, is there. Right on the back, you could just get a glimpse of Johan Museeuw. Great to see Johan Museeuw riding back. And next week is Paris-Roubaix.
Yes, and that man is so strong and singular-minded with his big classic races at this time of the year. Over the top of the Bosberg. And back come the boys because they refuse to give up. And this is Bortolami, who's surprising me. Gianluca Bortolami, a little bit of a backseat for him over the recent past, but doing very, very well.
Let's not forget in the past, Gianluca Bortolami has been the overall winner of the World Cup and a winner of many one-day classics. On the back of the group now, he has recovered, but Chandry must be feeling pretty confident right now, Phil, because I think from this group, Chandry is the man who packs the best sprint.
Well, I would love to think you're right, Paul, because this would be an absolutely outstanding result for the British if Chandry could get the victory today.
He'd be getting very nervous, though, Chandry. His own teammate is dragging back one or two contenders as well. And Ludo Dirksen will not give up at all. He's actually dragging back there Rolf Sorensen. And the other rider on the wheel there of Rolf Sorensen looked to me very much as if it was one of the other riders from Domo Farm Frites.
The only other rider to win this from Great Britain, Tommy Simpson, the great Tom. And we've waited a long time. Now it's up to Maximiliano Chandry, the man with the Italian name and a British mum, to try and do something special. Sorensen is also back here, and he's a big worry to everybody because he's an opportunist. And I'm sure as we run towards the finish, we'll put some form of attack in.
Very clever bike rider, Rolf Sorensen. He knows just exactly when is the right moment to hit with a surprise counterattack. He's going straight up there now. He wants to keep riding through with these riders to make them realise that he isn't quite as tired as he looks. Denis Zanetti moving into last position right now alongside Daniele Nardello from Mapei. Mapei at one time very strong in the group because they did have the presence of Stefano Zanini, but now all hopes of the big Mapei squad are going to be on Nardello's shoulders.
They won't stop riding hard, will they? There's no coordination here now. Everybody goes to the front as fast as he can and then sits up, and then they have a reorganisation, but they're not working as a unit. This might allow the chase group to make contact.
10 kilometres left to go, and this really is an incredible bike race, Phil. You know, because of that big group of all the favourites behind, the whole of the field may come together inside the last 5 kilometres. There's the 10 kilometre to go banner. Well, that can't be very much more than 15 seconds. Weseman is the man on the back. Nico Martin is in there as well, as is Museeuw and the world champion Weinsteins.
Well, we're back with the leaders, and sad to say the one man who hasn't made a return to the leaders is the US postal boy, Christian van der Velde. Then that is sad. He's had a wonderful, wonderful classic ride today, but I think you're going to find him somewhere back here in the chase group now.
This is the chase group out on the road. There on the back in the pink jersey, you just get a glimpse of Stefan Weseman. There is Johan Museeuw right in front of Nico Martin. Georgi Hincapie is in here as well with the dark blue jersey, and the white jersey that is on the shoulders of the world champion. These riders are not getting full cooperation in the group at the moment though, Phil. And looking up the road though, I think it's all but over for the breakaway because they are not very much more than 15 to 20 seconds in advance.
Well, they're saying 15 seconds is the gap, and Andre Schmiel, remember, the winner from last year, is in that group and coming up. This is Dirksens looking over and checking the men he's seen all of the time. Even that one, Eric Dekker, he may lose ground on the climbs, but he fights his way back. A remarkable ride by Dekker today.
Great ride. You've got to take your hat off to a performance like that. being left behind on so many occasions, but never giving up, always fighting back. Now, this is Daniele Nardello at the back. These guys now are going to start thinking about how to try and win the final sprint. And the final sprint in Merebeke is a very difficult one to judge. You do have to judge it to perfection, because if you lead the sprint out from too far out, you will absolutely die 1,000 deaths, because it is a long drag up to the finish line. And so many riders in the past have made the mistake of leading out from too far.
Well, what a superb race this has been. Go all the way. Michele Bartoli, another Tour of Flanders winner, just off our camera to the right there, but still in the thick of the action. Hasn't really come to his great form since his accident he had in the Tour of Germany, but he's looking for it. He was the winner of Het Volk this year, heralding what we hope will be the start of a great season for him. Kop van die Wedstrijd, that means the head of the bike race now, and there are a lot of familiar names have been right at the front of this bike race ever since we passed through Ostend.
Well, this is the chasing group now, the chasing group of all of the big names. 73 there is Balducci. He won't go to the front at all because he has a man in the leading group, and his man in the leading group is Gianluca Bortolami. There you can see the white jersey of the world champion as well, but the chasers now are getting much more urgent in their attempt to catch these men. These men have, most of them, been off the front of the bike race for more than 100 kilometers. There are a few fresh legs in there, including Gianluca Bortolami, Maximilian Chiandri. The freshest legs, I think, are on the legs of Denny Zanetti in the black jersey from Liquigas, because he came across at the very last moment.
Scooted across that gap with Sorensen, saw his chance and took it. There he is, right in the centre of our picture, and riding a very crafty race too at the moment. Nardello at the back. Now is Nardello, no, he's not working, Nardello. He stopped working now as he invites Sorensen to take the slipstream of the rider in front, Maximilian Chiandri.
And this is probably one of the big problems that you hate, in the fact that most of these riders will be using radios on board at the moment, and he will now know that he's got a teammate in the back group, and his teammate is Michele Bartoli, so he will probably refuse to work with that front group right now. And if one or two other riders do that, this group here now, containing Georgi Hincapie, may well just catch these guys in sight of the finish line.
It is going to be that close as we run into the last 7 kilometres. We're looking at a 13 seconds gap. This is amazing. Schmil, last year's winner, can now see his foe, and he can't quite reach them yet.
Well, the leading group now, they have to keep working all the way down to the finish. They dare not look over their shoulders, because they will see all the big names of professional cycling. Rolf Sorensen knows that. He's a very canny bike rider. He will be waiting for a moment within the last 2 kilometers to try and launch an attack and go alone. He's the kind of rider who can do that. On the other hand, Maximilian Chiandri, who's just gone forward in the Lampre-Dakin colours there, he will be thinking about the final sprint of the day.
Bortolami tucking in here on the wheel of Chris Pearce. Here comes Eric Decker down the line again, but this man is a workhorse once the hills are behind him. He's not afraid to continue. This is a real scrabble now as we run down towards Merebeke.
Well, there's Andre Schmil's group now, you know, looking up the road. They're just lifting their heads up slightly, and they can see in front of them the breakaway, the prey that they have been chasing and dreaming about ever since they escaped very early on in the day. There is Johan Museu in the Domo Farm Frites jersey there with a big helmet on, and rejoining the leaders once again. This race is now down to just 12 seconds. They've clawed back 1 second. 1 second every kilometre or so will bring them to within 5 seconds, and that can get wiped away in the last 200 metres.
What an amazing event now. We've never seen a race like this for years and years. It is touch and go. The 8 leaders have gone round the corner. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 chasers here. And it is touch and go. All of the cars and traffic in between have been pulled out by the race referees. This is a pursuit now of 2 almost equal sized groups as they're trying desperately now to reach the finish, which is only 6 kilometres away. The gap has gone out to 13 seconds.
It's going to be a fight. Mano a mano, group against group, all the way down to the finishing line. These guys have got to give it everything now, Phil, because if they get caught, they've got absolutely no chance of a thing in the sprint. 5 kilometres left to go. In 7.5 minutes time, we'll know who's going to win the Tour of Flanders, if it will be a man from this group or from the group behind. I have a feeling, though, looking at the names in this group, that they will catch them, but it is going to be oh so very close.
They too are under 5 kilometres to go. Back with the leaders now. We keep switching around here. This is a great pursuit, and the crowd know it, as this group might just yet prove to be a little bit unmanageable. they've got to start the individual attacking riding now, and I would expect Sorensen to be the attack. And somebody's gone off the front. Is it Chandry? No, he's here.
Somebody's attacked there. There's a slight acceleration. It wasn't Sorensen because he's third or fourth in the line. I think it was actually Ludo Dirksen who tried to go off the front there. It's the Lampre-Dakin jersey. He's still got a few ants left in those legs of his. A little bit still to go. A little bit left to try and attack to be a Belgian winner of the Tour of Flanders. At the back here, it's Chris Peers. And this is the group now behind with Christian van der Velde going off the back.
And you know, I think Sorensen did go then as they cut back to the second group. There was an attack by the riders. Sorensen, he went on the right of the road, and now the crowd are stepping back as there is a serious reaction from the leaders.
Well, this is a big split now. Everybody's fighting, scrambling to try and survive. This is Sorensen on the front. Sorensen's gone over the top of a counter move. He's followed here by Denis Zanetti in second position, and they seem now, Phil, to have got the gap. The gap is not much, but that's all you need coming down to the last few kilometres.
The two riders who reached the breakaways of the day are now trying to attack them again in tandem. As they switch across the road and grab at straws, they can't let Sorensen go, because if they do, he will be gone. This is a very typical Rolf move.
Well, Chris Peers is the man on the front, setting all the tempo, trying to pull them all back. But I noticed there that just a few moments ago, Chandry and Dirksen were riding alongside and they didn't talk. They need to discuss a little bit now. It's a quick chat to say, OK, my legs are good, sort the sprint out for me at the finish. But I think Dirksen, for the moment, thinking about himself, thinking about being a Belgian winner of the Tour of Flanders, they've pulled back the two attackers and Sorensen's gone again.
Well, that's a good move. He had to go again. Zanetti also took it up immediately. Nardella was right there to watch, but hasn't quite gone across the gap yet, and they're scrabbling back. But these attacks now surely are going to keep them away from the Schmil group.
Well, this is what is actually playing into the hands of the Schmil group, because they have had a couple of attacks, but you see how they've slowed down now, Phil, and that is a bad sign. You can't play around cat and mouse like this so close to the finish, especially when you've got a group of super favourites only 10 or 15 seconds behind.
3 kilometres to go. Decker moves up to number 2 wheel, decides to push on. Max Chandry has realised it. Dirksen now looks over his shoulder, should not bother to pick up the pace. His teammate is going clear. But there's still daylight between the group, but it's all still the same men at the front.
Great move by Decker. He's been off the back on every climb so far of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, but he still thought he'd have a go and try and catch out any of these riders and see if they were marking each other. Cofidis have got their man Chris Peers, and again Rolf Sorensen knows he's got to go. We're inside of Ninova right now, not too far to the finish line. It's Denis Zanetti picking up the chase, and in third place there is Dirksen's.
Well, they've got Sorensen's number, I think. That's another attack they quickly marshal. They know he's the sort of rider to do this. We've seen him do this to win stage in the Tour de France. He's a classic winner already. He's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's a brilliant bike rider. But Sorensen now is being marked out of this. He's got to win on his own, I think.
Well, when you've attacked 2 or 3 times like that, you've taken out the explosive possibility of a sprint finish, and that, I think, is why Rolf Sorensen wanted to try and get away alone. The sprint must certainly be very closely disputed at the finish, and I feel now, Phil, that as long as there's good cooperation between the Lampre riders, Max Chandry has got a very good chance of winning this. But Chandry always, when he's in a situation like this at 2 kilometres to go, seems to make a silly tactical mistake.
Well, let's hope you're wrong on this occasion, Paul, because we'd love to see Max win this one. It would be brilliant, and this is a real good shot for the man from Pistoia in Italy. There's yet another attack now as they rip down the outside. Surely these attacks and counterattacks are hurting somebody's legs. Bortolami a little bit slow to recover there, but he does recover as he takes Chandry back across the gap, and Dirksen's, the 2 Lampre men, are in a good position to attack now, and I think they've gone to chase somebody else.
Somebody else has moved off the front there. It looks like it might be Zanetti. It's a dark coloured jersey here, but in fact there's somebody just in front of him as well. So there's another attack gone right off the front here, and a big reaction coming, a big long line. It's difficult from this height to see just exactly who's gone off the front, but I think it may well have been the split that we've been waiting for. 2 riders chased by 2, and then a couple more scrambling just to get onto the slipstream. This is the right-hand turn now, and if they look straight up in front of them, very shortly they will see the Flamme Rouge, the red kite indicating just 1,000 metres to go.
There it is. This is Pisix. This is Sorensen here on the left here. These attacks and counter has put the chase group out of Schmil to 20 seconds, so that should do it now. They've never caught up with this leading group. The only men who have, Sorensen and Zanetta, and they've animated this, and here comes an attack, and this is now just to chase down yet another breakaway. The vital right-hand bend is coming.
Well, that is Denny Zanetta in first place. The effort there being made by Ludo Dirksens to pull them back. Daniel Nardello moving up into third place. Sciandri's well placed right now. He's in fourth slot. Eric Decker at the back, looking down, making sure he's in the right gear. He's an awful long way back for this sprint, but it is a very long sprint up the finishing straight here in Meerbeke. Well, the winner must come from one of these riders. The main contenders are still 10 to 15 seconds behind. Certainly, the sprint will start now.
269 kilometres come down to a sprint from a brilliant group of bike riders today. Now, can Max Sciandri do it? He's got the front very early on here, and it's a slightly uphill finish as Nardello now puts in a challenge. Sciandri's gone far too early and is wiped out of it. He has made a terrible mistake here, and Zanetta is coming up, and on the rails is Bortolami, and you know, I think Bortolami got it, and I think, Paul, that was Decker who just got second.
Well, it was very close. It was all in the lunge for the line. This is the sprint now for the lesser places. Coming right up there is Stefan Weissermann. Right on Weissermann's wheel is Ronan Weinstein. Hincap is right in the middle of it as well, but in the lunge for the line, it's going to be the world champion. Or is it? That's another close sprint.
Well, I'll go for the world champion. He was right alongside Andre Schmil, though. That'll go down to the photo. And let's have a look at that finish again. Watch the left, I think. Yes, Gianluca Bortolami has got a World Cup victory, and he's back to his old form. And the man who emphasised you never give up, Eric Decker, has taken second place.
But look at this, Phil. See how far back Eric Decker came from. Bortolami squeezing up through the inside. The speed of Eric Decker on the left-hand side there, almost getting the victory in the lunge for the line.
Well, what an extraordinary Tour de Flanders. One of the best, I think. Here it is again in slow motion. Zanetta looked like the biggest win of his career, and then at a rush, up came Decker on the right, Bortolami on the left. Bortolami got it. Sorensen fourth across the line. There's the slow motion, and there's confirmation of that result. It was Daniela Nardello in fifth, Chris Piers sixth, Sciandri at the back of the group, just one ahead of Dirksens. Schmil it was who got the better of Weinsteins on the line to take ninth place. Well, I think now we can join Paul Sherwin.
Max, that must be one of the best Tour of Flanders you've ever ridden. You were in the moves all of the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, I think my teammate, you know, just riding in Belgium, we just didn't really want to. It was a sprint for me, you know. I mean, it should have been, should have done his moves till the final sprint, and then, you know. But
all the work that Dirksen did, don't you think he should have sacrificed himself for you at the end?
That's the point. That's the point, you know. 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th or something like that. But it's no good.
Well, George, the team did an excellent job for you today, but that group that you were with behind, it was a little bit strange, the tactics at times.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't. I felt like today I went every time there was a hard selection on any climb. I was there, and the one that I missed was something that went on the flats. We didn't really expect it, so I don't think I wasn't in the final breakaway for lack of effort and for lack of strength. I was amongst the strongest today. I felt I was one of the strongest, and the team was one of the strongest teams in the race today. We were at the front all day, but it was a shame we didn't catch those 8 guys at the end. But I feel good, and I think I'm going to be very good in Roubaix and get Wevelgem.
A performance like today, does that give you good morale for next weekend for Paris-Roubaix, because that is a very important rendezvous for you?
Yeah, it's definitely an important rendezvous, but today was also very important for the team, and we wanted a better result. I'm happy with the way I felt, though. I know I rode a good race, and I was strong and felt good all day. So I just hope to have good luck and have the same legs in Roubaix.
Very good ride by Christian van der Velde.
Yeah, Christian's been doing great all year. It was great to have him up in the breakaway, and then he tried to help me at the end to close the gap. So Christian did a super job, and expect to see him in the front in Liège.
Well, Christian, a great ride today there in Tour of Flanders, and it must have felt magnificent being at the front with all those big names.
Yeah, we had some big names and a big group, actually, and I was just always worried where the whereabouts of George was. That was our biggest priority, and I just tried to keep myself in the front as our group was changing from people from behind and leaving people that we had earlier. And I just wish I would have had a little bit more at the end to help George out and bridge that gap. And I think it might have been a little bit of a different story. But yeah, we're really happy. We have probably the strongest team today, and just really couldn't put it together and put someone in the front. But next weekend, maybe a little bit better team sorted for Paris-Roubaix with George, who knows he could do really well. And again, we're going to be working 100% for him, and hopefully get out on the podium, US Postal.
Well, US Postal has really become one of the teams of the classics now. With the explosion of Mapei and the formation of Domo, you're one of the teams that are right there all of the time.
Yeah, it really has changed things with the splitting of the unbeatable teams like the Bulls getting all split up, and we're happy to be this squeak in there. You know, we're always underdogs, and I hope to stay that way. I'd like to be that 100.
Well, the Belgian television today were very complimentary about you and your Belgian background with the name Van der Velde. It must have felt very good to race over those roads in the front group at the Tour of Flanders.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable race. I mean, this is the biggest race, one-day race in my heart, bar none. I mean, it's has all the aspects of an amazing race with the cobblestones and little climbs, and it's 265k long.
A couple of years' time, we may well see you fighting out for the win.
Hopefully so. Thanks.
What a superb race this really was. Well, 7 years ago, Gianluca Bortolami shot to fame by winning 2 World Cup races. Until then, we'd hardly heard of him. And since then, he's had injury and sickness, and now it looks as though he's back. He was a great winner today, but what would have happened if Eric Decker had taken this race just 1 metre further? Then he would have won his first Tour of Flanders. Until the next time, for Paul Show, and I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.